Hello, you. From where are you watching the night unfold tonight? Are you listening to the soft breath of the world as it settles into darkness? Or are you listening to something within you, a quiet engine of sleep beginning to hum? If you're by a window, can you feel the glass cool against your fingertips? A delicate whisper of the outside world forming a boundary between waking and dream. If you're on a hill, do you notice the grass under you, the earth listening as you listen, while the skyline thins into a velvet sea? If you're tucked inside, can you hear the gentle rain or the distant swerve of a car's headlights fading, leaving a lullaby of tires on pavement? Wherever you are tonight, you are invited to drift with the darkness, to let the sky become your map and your cradle, a quiet, patient companion that knows your name and does not hurry you toward anything but rest. Are you ready to listen to time as it moves through distance? The light you see from these stars tonight left them long ago, a patient traveler that tells you the past in a whisper. Some of the lights you're watching may have begun their journeys when humans wore only animal skins and wondered how to count their own breaths. If you look at a star that is, say, 1,000 light years away, you are seeing that star as it was 1,000 years in the past, not as it is in the moment you peer at it. And if a star is 10,000 light years away, you are looking into a history that is almost as old as stories themselves. A history that tells you the sky is not a single snapshot, but a moving, breathing archive. The mind can settle into that. The body can settle into the thought that you are watching a theater where time itself glides by like a soft, sleeping river. The fact travels gently through your awareness. Light is a traveler. It takes a long journey to arrive, and what arrives in your eyes is a remnant of yesterday's light, serenely refracted across the living night. Do you notice how the sky appears to drift, not as a painting, but as a living thing? The Earth's own rotation makes the heavens seem to move, like a ceiling that breathes in time with your breath. The stars rise in the east, climb slowly across the sky, and sink toward the west, as if the night itself were a ship gently turning on its axis. Because of that motion, constellations drift across the mind as well as the firmament. If you imagine Orion or Cassiopeia as a quiet friend who lingers in one corner of the room, you can hear a soft reply from the darkness. The shapes are human inventions, stories drawn on the sky by people who long to navigate, to tell time, to map the night for travelers and dreamers. Constellations are a shared language, a cultural cartography of light, yet they are not fixed rules of the universe. They are, in a sense, lullabies you can hum while you wait for sleep to arrive. The fact you can hold here is this. There are 88 official constellations recognized by careful, patient astronomers, a set of signs that helped sailors and stargazers alike to feel oriented when the world was vast and uncertain. Think of that as a gentle metaphor for your own night. There are guides for wandering minds, lines and letters drawn not to trap you, but to help you follow your own inner navigation toward rest. Now, if you watch long enough, you might notice the faint, pale glimmer of stars beyond our own crowded Milky Way, the distant neighbors that belong to another part of the universe altogether. There are features in the night that remind us of scale. The Andromeda Galaxy, a neighbor far away, is moving toward us slowly, like a patient footstep approaching a doorway. In the span of eons, it will meet the Milky Way in a cosmic embrace, and the two will merge into a larger, more complex halo of stars. The fact is not a frightful omen, but a quiet arc of destiny, a reminder that even galaxies, these vast, cathedral-sized neighborhoods, are not forever stationary. They are in motion, just as you are, just as your thoughts are shifting softly toward rest. And if you let yourself settle into that knowledge, you can feel the night inviting you to witness a future that will arrive only after an immense length of time. A lullaby of patience that travels at the speed of light, which is fast by human standards and nearly unfathomably slow in the context of galactic history. There is a gentle, practical truth embedded in the old science, a truth that feels almost like a soft-spoken friend. Yes, we map the heavens, but the maps themselves have grown and changed with time as human understanding deepens. The idea of a star map has evolved from chalk and imagination to precise optical navigation and careful cataloging. You might imagine early astronomers with simple tools, the astrolabe, a device of brass and string used to measure the angle of a star above the horizon, to chart its path as night folds into morning. These tools were not instruments of conquest, but instruments of care, designed to help people travel safely, to help mothers and fathers pause before sleep and look up with a sense of direction. The fact is that star maps are living things, updated as observations improve and as collaborations across cultures share their own stories of the sky. Tonight, you are listening to a lullaby that is also a history of sharing, a gentle reminder that knowledge is carried forward not by arrogance, but by a patient line of questions asked in the dark and answered by the soft glow of distant suns. Would you like to hear a small, intimate sleep story that keeps company with these facts? Let us drift along a thread of memory and imagination. In a quiet old observatory, a telescope rests on a heavy tripod, its lens dark and patient as a well-worn eye. A lone astronomer leans close, watching a field of stars blink with a regular rhythm, the way a heart beats when it is safe. In such a place, memory becomes light, and light becomes memory. The observer learns to read the night not as a single event, but as a sequence of moments that braid into a larger story. The astronomer might tell you that a star's color and brightness reveal its temperature and stage of life, a truth learned by careful observation and quiet calculation. Yet the daylight truth remains. Many of these stars are long dead, their light only now beginning its journey to your eyes, a reminder that the night you witness is a palimpsest of cosmic time, written again and again across millions of years. If you pause here, listening to the hush between sentences, you may feel the way your own breathing matches the slow unfolding of a cosmic calendar, the monthly rhythm of cycles and tides, a reminder that sleep is also a cycle, a gentle agreement between you and the universe about what to do with time. There are moments when the mind might try to race ahead, to map every star, to click every fact into place like a jingle of a bell. But the heart knows another rhythm, and it is the rhythm of allow and rest, the permission to let go a little more with every breath. You may permit yourself to dissolve into the quiet, to let your shoulders drop toward the bed or the floor, to release the day's edges until they become soft halos around your mind. You may permit the night to do its thousand-year job of moving stars without your pressing need to understand every line. The stars are patient, and so is sleep. The fact remains that many galaxies crowd the universe with their own stories, but you do not need to hear them all to be comforted. You only need to hear enough to feel held, enough to know you are a part of something larger than your own breath and heartbeat, a vast, kind cosmos that invites you to settle, to float, to dissolve into the quiet. Let us linger for a moment longer on the idea of constellations as human-made maps and myths, because their charm lies in their listening, not in their perfection. People around the world drew different shapes where others drew lines, each map a gentle record of a culture's hopes and fears, a time-worn invitation to find meaning in the pattern of light. Perhaps you know Orion the Hunter with his belt of 3 stars. Perhaps you know Cassiopeia, a crown in the sky, a zigzag waltz of W-shaped light that makes some nights feel like a lullaby in a language only the moon understands. The fact that these are not universal laws, but human stories, helps you remember something essential. You are allowed to tell your own story to the sky tonight. Your mind may sketch a dimension of your dreams along the Milky Way's ribbon, a private constellation formed by brave hopes and quiet fears that you have earned and that you can lay down in sleep. The night does not demand you to be perfect at mapping the heavens. It invites you to practice listening to yourself, map your own dreams, gently and imperfectly, with kindness. And what about the future when you wake? The sleep you are embracing now is a form of time travel, a pause in the ongoing experiment of becoming. The cosmic facts you have held softly in your mind, sunlight as a star, light as a traveler, the Milky Way as a luminous river, constellations as human-made maps, galaxies like Andromeda moving toward us, are not there to overwhelm you, but to anchor you in a sense of place. You are a person who takes up space beneath a sky that knows how to wait. You are a student of patience, a keeper of slow wonder. You may carry these truths like a small, warm compass that points toward rest. If you ever become restless at night, if the thoughts scatter like loose leaves in a breeze, return to the simple fact of distance. Return to the idea that you have already traveled the length of countless breaths without ever leaving the comforts of your bed. The sky will still be there when you wake, but now it will be your own dream map, a personal constellation composed of everything you chose to release into sleep. Can you feel your body begin to settle more deeply? The spine lengthens, the shoulders loosen, the jaw unclenches, and your breath finds a slower, deeper cadence. You have permission to let your inhale feel like a small reservoir filling you with calm, and to let your exhale carry away the day's weights, drop by soft drop, until only a gentle shimmer remains. You may drift where you please, toward the sea of memory, toward a corridor of future quiet, toward the idea that somewhere within the starry archive, your name is written in a whisper that belongs to you and you alone. The night, like a patient teacher, repeats in half-sung lines the same truth. You are safe here, you belong here, and you may settle into a sleep that feels like a return to a place you've always known, a place where the mind's questions rest long enough for the heart to brave kind answers. Let me offer you one more fragment of wonder before we drift further. The idea that light travels at astonishing speed is true, but there is something even more astonishing. The way our senses collapse centuries of distance into a single soft moment of now when the eyes close and the breath slows. In that moment, you are connected to the farthest stars and the oldest photons in a way that makes time feel flexible, almost pliable, like a piece of sea glass you can turn over in your palm. You can tell yourself a story about how a photon left a star and after a long journey found its way to your eyes while you listened to the night breathe. The narrative is a lullaby not a lecture, and it is enough to steady you. If a question invites you to linger a little longer, here is one for your heart and your night. What would you say to a star if you could speak its language for a minute? Perhaps you'd tell it that you are listening and that its light has traveled for millions of years, carrying with it a memory of a time long before your birth. Perhaps you'd offer a small thanks for the quiet and for the way its presence helps you forget the noise of a clock that never stops ticking. The universe does not demand an answer from you tonight. It invites you to be present with the awe that arises when you realize how small you are, how grandly you are cherished by a night that refuses to hurry you toward morning. This is the kind of permission that sleep gives you. Permission to be small, to be grateful, to be still. As we near the end of this lullaby for a star map, imagine for a moment again the vastness that holds you and all that you know. The night is a safe harbor in which curiosity might wander, but curiosity here is not a storm. It is a gentle breeze that cools a tired brow and soothes a restless mind. You may carry forward the fact that stars are not merely points of light, but stories that hum in the quiet corners of your mind. You may carry forward the fact that our galaxy is a vast home where countless suns shine, and that some stars we cannot see still glow in the background of the sky, like unseen guardians who watch over the tides of sleep. You may carry forward the fact that constellations are living myths, revised by cultures and reclaimed by dreamers who need a map to anchor their journeys through darkness. And you may carry forward the fact that even as galaxies drift and the universe grows older, you have the same right to rest as every particle of starlight that finally comes to rest where it belongs, in your breath, in your heart, in your quiet, safe night. If you are waiting for a sign to surrender to the soft pull of sleep, consider this sign. The sky is not asking you to solve it all tonight, but to listen and to let the listening be enough. You may drift, you may float, you may settle wherever your body finds a peaceful harbor. You may exhale a little longer than you inhale, and with every exhale, you let the day dissolve a fraction more, until you are almost wholly present in the gentle, patient present tense of now. The stars above are patient with you. They hum a timeless tune that says rest is a form of knowing, just as waking is a form of learning. Let the last of your thoughts slip away like a ship sliding into a harbor, leaving behind only the warm glow of the harbor's lamps and a gentle, unhurried horizon. And so we close this moment with a soft closing thought, a promise and a blessing. You are allowed to sleep with the light of distant suns inside you. You are allowed to dream as you heard their histories in the hush. You are allowed to wake with gratitude for having walked through a night map that you did not finish reading, because a sky remains to be read again tomorrow. The map will be there, the stars will listen, and you will find your way back to breath and to quiet you a little while longer, until the morning's first sigh reassures you that the journey continues, that you are still traveling, that rest is a voyage you know how to navigate. Now breathe in softly and let your breath travel through you like a slow comet whose tail is made of patience. Breathe out slowly and release a memory of tension that is no longer needed, dissolving into the dark like a sugar cube in warm tea, becoming one with the night's own sweetness. You may drift with the night's gentle current. You may let your thoughts settle as if they were pebbles laid along a riverbank. You may lie back and listen to the world's quiet heart as it keeps time with your own. It is safe here. It is right here. Your sleep awaits, a star map of your own making, a constellation that glows with your name, a lullaby that begins with a breath and ends with another breath, a bridge between what you know and what you dream. Rest now and listen to the night say your name with faint warmth, a soft invitation to return whenever you wish. The universe does not hurry you, it simply cradles you gently in the quiet and asks you to begin again whenever you are ready. Good night, traveler of the dark, keeper of curious thoughts, friend of the patient sky. You are safe here, you are held here, and you may sleep. If you listen closely, you can hear the old, patient cadence of the sun in the day's fading heartbeat. The long, slow pendulum of heat and time, the way heat leans toward you as if to tell you a story you already knew in your bones, but have forgotten in your hurry. The sun has been a patient sculptor of your world, shaping days and nights alike with a calm, almost ceremonial touch. It is tempting to think of it as a lamp that never tires, but it is more like a hearth that never ceases to yearn for the world's warmth. As you breathe in, you feel a reminder you are not intruding on this story. You are a part of it, the audience and the chorus, the one who settles into the tale and lets it carry you. Tonight, we travel along a line of time that begins not with a clock, but with a spark that woke a sun from a cloud of infancy and set it to burning across the ages. The sun is a middle-aged star, a steady, unhurried beacon about 4.6 billion years old. It has spent long seasons fusing hydrogen into helium at its core, a patient alchemy that yields energy with a quiet insistence. Imagine a furnace stubborn in its glow, where small particles kiss and cling and fuse and release heat that travels outward in a slow, luminous breath. That breath warms Earth, then the people who gaze at it and tell stories about it, who measure the hours by its rising and its falling, who, perhaps on their best nights, fall asleep to the memory of a sunbeam that once crossed the sky with the certainty of a drumbeat. As you settle, you notice something else about the sun that feels almost like a whisper. Its distance is never a thing one can fully hold in the mind, yet its influence is intimate enough to woo you into a soft reverie. The light you see at dawn and the quiet gold at dusk take about 8 minutes and 20 seconds to reach you if you could stand perfectly still to measure them. The time it takes for a single photon to traverse the wide, patient distance from solar heart to your sleepy eyes. The journey is long enough to soften every edge of a fear or a worry, long enough to teach your breath a rhythm that matches the universe's own patience. And so you inhale, slow, calm, and exhale, letting the minutes melt into a diaphanous blanket that drapes around your shoulders and up the spine of the night. In these soft hours, you might imagine a story about an older mapmaker who walked the shore and traced the sun's arc across the heavens with nothing but a stick, a circle laid on the sand, and a quiet reverence for cycles. The mapmaker watched the sun rise, not as a bright certainty, but as a patient traveler who marked time with shadows and with the changing length of day. Each solstice and equinox became a little poem, a recipe for living with the Earth's tilt, a reminder that even the grandest movements can be understood in the language of patterns. The way long days bend into shorter ones, how the room grows cooler as a lamp of sky slides toward sleep. And as the mapmaker's foot left a trail in the damp sand, a small child appeared at the edge of the shore, eyes wide as stars, listening to the tide speak in a language of gentle math and soft metaphors. The child asked the mapmaker, "Where does the sun go when night comes?" The answer was not a door, but a turning of the world's face, a promise that the sun does not vanish so much as retire into the far, friendly blue of tomorrow's dawn. You and this coastline, this room, this night, are already in accord with those roots. The sun's history, told in a soft, patient voice, moves not in a single leap, but in a sequence of steps you can almost feel beneath your feet as you walk along the shoreline of your own breath. The first step is the sun's identity as a star, a G-type perhaps, a gentle classification that is less a label than a tone in a grand choir. It is not a thing to grasp so much as a note to listen for, its place among countless suns that glow through the vastness, a chorus of luminescent bodies whose stories you scarcely know, yet whose light shapes your evenings and your dreams. And now a second step, small but decisive, as if the night itself has decided to give you a secret. The sun is a furnace of fusion. In its core, hydrogen is pressed and coaxed into helium by pressures that feel like a patient hand on your back, guiding you toward rest. The energy produced travels outward, a luminous whisper that travels for millennia, climbs through the sun's depths, and finally reaches you as warmth and daylight. The idea of such hidden warmth may comfort your nerves as you lie down, because it suggests that even when you sleep, something active and patient remains, stirring the universe with the same quiet insistence you feel in your own chest when you breathe. A third step appears as a grand punctuation in the solar narrative, the sun's size. It towers with a diameter of about 1.39 million kilometers, a figure so vast it humbles measurement and mind alike. Yet its effect on you is intimate enough to brush your skin with a familiar tenderness. That huge circle of light is not a distant monument, but a homegrown lamp, a friend with a patient habit of rising and setting, a clock that ticks with the ordinary sigh of a living world. When you think of that scale, you are reminded that size does not govern the gentleness of a bedtime story. Even a planet-sized star can be the soft lullaby that teaches you how to breathe, how to slow your pulse, how to float, if only for a few late-night minutes, in the space between awake and dream. A fourth step enters, and the air becomes quieter still, the journey of light itself. The photons that begin their trip at the solar heart take about 8 minutes and 20 seconds to arrive here, to your window, to your room, to your own skin as it cools from the earlier heat. They arrive as sunbeams we yearn to hold and do not, as shadows we learn to recognize not as an absence, but as a language, the language of a day's end, the grammar of a planet's tilt, the syntax of seasons. The distance that light travels does not intimidate. It invites you to witness a small miracle, the way time becomes a brushstroke that paints the moment with depth and patience. When you close your eyes, you can feel the memory of that light behind your lids, a faint gold trace that flickers and dissolves into the length of your breath. A fifth step offers a forward glance, a gentle hinge between a history remembered and a future whispered. The sun's life has its own arithmetic and its own poetry. It is a star roughly middle-aged in cosmic terms, and while it will someday end as a red giant, swell in the night sky, extend its glow, devour closing corners of this very plane, this is later than your evening and longer than your sleep. The arc of its existence is not a threat, but a grand invitation to marvel at the continuity of things. The way a star's life is not a single flash, but a long, patient procession of light, each era unfolding into the next, each generation passing its warmth on to the next, like a grandmother handing down a shawl of sunbeams to a child who will one day tell a story to a grandchild. Tonight in your room, that future is a tender reassurance that even endings have a kinship with beginnings, and the shift from day to night is not an abrupt cut, but a graceful fade, a choreography of rest and awakening. Now let us weave a few more threads into this solar tapestry, threads that present you with small, real touchstones, the 4 to 6 facts that anchor the story in the soft bedrock of knowledge, while still gliding with the drift of dream. The sun you see is not merely a pretty ornament in the sky. It is a working star, about 4.6 billion years old, a being whose core ferments hydrogen into helium, releasing energy that makes the day possible. The light you catch, even in the dimmest hours before sleep fully gathers you, is a visitor who has traveled far, taking roughly 8 minutes and 20 seconds to arrive at your window, to kiss your skin, to land in your eyes with the warmth of a reminder. The sun's diameter, enormous as it is, becomes a comforting boundary you can press the edge of with your mind, a mental cushion that holds the night softly in place. And the arc of the sun across the sky, the daily ritual of rise, traverse, and fall, has roots in a tilt of the earth, a tilt some call a gentle accident of gravity and time, which makes life on this pale blue dot possible and gives you your seasons, your long afternoons, and your evenings that invite a slow, unhurried sleep. There is also the quiet knowledge that the sun has a destiny of change, not a tyrant's decree but a patient forecast. In billions of years, it will shed its outer layers, shed its heat, and cool into a white dwarf, leaving behind a memory of its earlier brilliance in the form of starlight that is never quite ready to vanish from the sky, only to become fainter, a soft afterglow. You do not need to fear that end tonight. You need only allow the idea to exist, as you would let a far-off lighthouse keep its watch while you drift toward your own shore. This is the nature of cosmic memory, a long, quiet record of what has happened, what is happening now, and what will, sometime, become a story you tell again and again in your sleep. As you drift deeper, you might entertain a small, tender scene, a traveler perhaps, standing on a hill at dusk, looking up at the last gold thread of solar light threading the clouds. The traveler opens a notebook and begins to draw the sun's path as it would appear over the horizon in different seasons, the arc widening or narrowing with the tilt of the earth. Each sketch is imperfect in the way most honest pictures are, because a night sky is not a fixed image but a living map, shifting with the turning of ages, with the slow breath of the wind, with the distance between a planet and its star. The traveler then looks up and asks you softly, as if you had asked first, what stories does a sunbeam tell when it finally lands upon your shoulder? And you respond in your own quiet voice, not with words as much as with a sigh, a nod, a settled rest. The answer is simple. The sun tells you to breathe, to listen, to be patient, to let the world exhale with you. If a question arises in your mind in these moments, trust that it is welcome. What does it mean to know the sun? Not a single neat fact, but a living, breathing relationship. You know the sun by the warmth on your skin when you step into a late afternoon, by the way the day's color deepens when the light nears the horizon, by the quiet that follows after you close your eyes and let your breath slow. The sun's history becomes a lullaby when we tell it, as a story of relationships, radiant energy traveling through space, bolts of information arriving in your mind as color and heat, people and places learning to keep time with the day's pulse. The poetry of science here is not cold, but comforting, a reminder that even the most precise measurements can walk hand in hand with the soft, intangible beauty of a night sky. Would you like to listen to a mini story about a moonlit evening where a solitary astronomer watched the sun's return after a long eclipse? It is a small tale that holds a larger truth. The scientist had prepared a telescope, but more importantly a breath that could wait for the sun to reappear behind the moon's gentle silhouette. When the light finally came back, it did so with a saunter rather than a sprint, as if the sky itself had just exhaled after a held breath. The astronomer did not rush to record a single fact. Instead, they listened to the way the air felt cooler, the way the birds resumed their afternoon songs, the way the horizon seemed to tilt with a new sense of possibility. In that moment, the observer understood that the solar history is not merely a ledger of data. It is a patient resonance, a conversation between light and the world that invites you to slow down and hear what the day's end has learned. Now you drift toward the next layer of the dream, the idea that the sun's energy is a continuous emission, a daily gift that makes life on Earth possible. The solar constant, roughly about 1360 watts of energy per square meter at Earth's distance, keeps the planet's rivers and forests alive, keeps your own body aware enough to dream, to count breaths, to settle into sleep. It is a curious paradox that such an immense trove of energy is so intimate in effect. It warms a blanket on your bed, colors the sky at dusk, and grants you the quiet permission to surrender the day's pace. The energy does not rush. It lingers, an old friend who knows you well enough to let you take your time in arriving at rest. And so you do. You settle as the daylight dissolves into a softer spectrum of wind and cloud, and you remember that fusion core, that mighty furnace, that simple fact. The sun converts a sea of hydrogen into helium, and in doing so, it makes possible your own private theater of dreams. In this long, winding sleep narrative, some of the most important ideas arrive softly, as if whispered by a breeze. The history of the solar system, as it touches your life, tells you that the world is not a rigid map, but a living atlas. The sun's gravity keeps the planets in their appointed paths. The Earth follows a gentle orbit, a circle cast with a tilt that gives us seasons and tells us when to pause and listen, when to take a breath that tastes of the sea or the pine or the rain. The night you are about to meet is the best companion for such an atlas. For in darkness, the sun becomes only a memory, and yet an ever-present possibility in the mind's eye, an idea you can carry with you, a beacon you can reopen when you wake. And so, as you drift further into sleep, your mind becomes a quiet harbor for these thoughts. You are not required to solve them or own them. You are asked only to listen and to surrender. The sun's history is yours to cradle, not because you are responsible for its past, but because you are connected to its present glow. This steady warmth that keeps your body calm, that makes your heart beat slow, that invites the world to pause in your presence and breathe with you. The solar story is a kind of lullaby for the Earth, a reminder that even the most distant flame can nurture a soft, intimate peace when approached with care and a patient heart. 4 to 6 gentle facts appear again in the hush, tucked into the sentences, the way moonlight finds the edges of a sleeping village. The sun's age is 4.6 billion years, long enough to store countless stories in its bright, patient memory. The sun's core fuses hydrogen into helium, a steady science that hums along at the center of a living star. The sun's diameter is about 1.39 million kilometers, a figure that dwarfs your nightbed, your room, your entire town, and yet it chooses to touch you with warmth, not with threat. The light from the sun travels to Earth in about 8 minutes and 20 seconds, a reminder that you are never wholly alone with the day's end. You are courted by a long-distance conversation with a distant friend. And in the far horizon of time, the sun will someday become a red giant, then a quiet white dwarf, a gentle denouement that whispers of cycles, endings, and new beginnings that will someday begin again in some other form. These are not statistics to memorize in the way you memorize a password. They are the thread you hold as you walk towards sleep, the sense that you and the cosmos share a patient thread that helps you unwind. If you feel the day's last warmth on your skin, there is a reason for it beyond habit. The sun's light is a visitation that helps your muscles release, your jaw drop, your shoulders soften, your eyes close with a gentle reluctance to open again until morning's first light. You may tilt your head to one side and imagine that a soft, golden tide is washing over you, each wave a minute, each crest a memory. The world beyond your window grows a shade darker, and in this shade you learn a secret. You can let go of the day without losing your way. You can drift, not aimlessly, but with intention, toward a sleep that feels safe, intimate, and perfectly yours. The night receives you with the same respect you offer to a sunrise, with a slow, patient welcome that does not hurry or demand. It simply softens the room, language with air, and invites you to breathe, to melt, to drift. In the style of the sleepy history we're tracing together, the story of the sun becomes a chorus of small, intimate moments. A grandmother explains the stars to a grandchild, using the glow of the lamp, the circle drawn on the floor, and the outline of a sunbeam on a page. A sailor, later in life, keeps his journals by lantern light, noting how the sun's position in the sky marks the courses of waves and the mood of the sea, how the light can be a compass and a memory, both. A teacher in a quiet classroom speaks softly about solar eclipses, how the moon's orbit can momentarily steal the sun's glow, teaching humility to those who observe it. And in your own room, you are an observer too, a recipient of centuries of curiosity and care that have traveled from the sun to the eye and now settle inside you as a safer, more tranquil form of thought. So with that understanding tucked like a small, warm pebble in your pocket, you allow yourself to sink more deeply into your bed. The bed becomes a ship's deck, the room a quiet harbor, the night a broad sea that invites you to float, to dissolve pressure, to settle into a soft, steady stillness. The solar history, with its gentle facts and its slow, lyrical pace, is not a lecture but a lullaby in a language that blends science with tenderness. It tells you that you are anchored to something ancient and luminous, something that has traveled far through time to greet you with calm and affection. It reminds you to breathe, to listen, to let your attention drift like a leaf upon a stream, ever so gently toward oblivion and beyond. If a last thought flickers before the night swallows it whole, let it be this: that the sun's long, patient story is a mirror for your own. You have a body that warms, a mind that questions, a heart that seeks solace in the quiet. And here, in the stillness the sun helped create, you may choose to end your day not with a fear of darkness, but with a trust in the comforting depth of sleep. You are safe here, held by air and timber and bedclothes, and the distant, breathing glow of a star that never truly leaves. You are part of a solar tale that stretches from the core of a sun to the softest of dreams, a continuous thread that ties the day to the night, the waking world to the sleeping world, the measurable facts to the immeasurable, exquisite calm you are now inviting into your chest. And so we end this segment of the solar history not with an ending, but with a quiet exhale, a slow release of tension, an inclination toward rest that feels almost inevitable, as if your body learned long ago to listen to the sun and to follow its gentle invitation. To breathe, to drift, to settle, to dissolve into the night, to wake, perhaps, when the dawn returns with a new brightness and a new chance to begin again. For now, you simply listen to the world's breath and drift with it, a traveler secured by the most ancient light, a listener who has learned to trust the cadence of the universe's lullaby. Close your eyes when you're ready and let the story of the sun, the enduring, patient, luminous history that touches your skin and travels through your eyes, become a thread that leads you deeper into sleep. You do not need to chase any more facts. You need only to follow the soft pull of the glow, to let your thoughts settle, and to drift along the quiet river of night until the world inside you grows still enough to cradle you into a sweet, unbroken rest. Close your eyes if you wish, and hear the world recede with a kind of friendly tide. You may notice the soft rustle of leaves, the faint chiming of faraway windows, the way the air itself feels cooler against your skin as the night grows deeper. The night, in its quiet, does not demand that you possess knowledge in a single breath. It invites you to listen, to notice, to permit. And if your mind wanders, that is perfectly fine. You can gently return to the sound of your breath, to the rhythm of your own calm, as if you were dialing a distant star with the simple press of a quiet intention. Perhaps you are thinking of the eyes that have watched the sky for centuries, not with the haste of a hurried glance, but with the patient, almost ceremonial gaze of someone who understands that the universe does not reveal everything at once. You may picture the instrument as a kind of doorway, a doorway not to conquer the night, but to observe it with reverence. The quiet telescope waits like a lighthouse of glass and metal, its purpose not to shout discoveries into the dark, but to invite the darkness to share its secrets with you, one careful photon at a time. If you are ready, you might slip into a small tale that travels with you. A weary astronomer, perhaps long ago, who carries a wooden chair, a notebook with edges frayed from years of turning pages, and a lens that has learned to listen more than to command. The room would be dim, the lights soft and golden, and outside, the night would stretch endlessly, a velvet map studded with tiny, patient fires. The astronomer would calibrate the telescope as one might tune a fine instrument of music, listening for the faint resonance of a distant world. And when the eyepiece finally rests to rest upon a point in the dark, a star perhaps, the observer smiles, because wonder has finally found its doorway, and you, too, have permission to step through if you wish. You may permit the night to speak to you in its own language, which is a language of quiet pauses and shifting points of light. The telescope does not shout. It tilts and follows the dance of photons that have traveled across years and years just to touch the edge of your awareness. And you may feel a peculiar, soft sensation, as if your own eyelids were becoming a second telescope, a gentle extension of the instrument that lies here with you in this moment. Eyelids of the night, you could call it, because both the night and your eyes share the art of closing and opening with careful intention. When you close your eyes, you are not closing the sky. You are opening a more intimate window into your own inner constellations, a way to breathe in unison with the universe's long, patient breath. A quiet invitation rests in your chest. You may let your thoughts drift like a slow river that has learned to meander without hurry. You may notice how the world outside stills as your body settles, how the pulse of your blood finds a slower tune, how your lungs become quiet, even as your mind continues to wander and wonder. This is not a retreat from the world. It is a way to cradle the world, to let it speak through you with the gentleness of a whispering thread. How old is the night you are meeting now, you may wonder. The night is older than you and older than your ancestors, older than the first spark of interest in the heavens. The answer, if you wish to hold it softly, is that the night has always listened, and the night has always asked kindly for patience. And because you are willing to listen, a small door opens within you, and you discover that you can allow time to dissolve a little, to slow your thoughts so that they can catch every unspoken note that the stars hum. Now a few gentle facts drape into the fabric of your quiet dream, as if the skies themselves were weaving them into a cloak for your sleep. The first fact is that a telescope magnifies not the stars themselves, but the detail of what you otherwise would not see. The photons, tiny traveling specks of light, hasten across the vast stretches of space, and a telescope gathers them, concentrates them, and makes a whisper of a pattern audible to your eyes and your mind. You may consider this. The night does not shrink when viewed through glass. Rather, it offers you closer companionship with distant corners of the cosmos, a more intimate companionship than you could have with a mere glance. Second, the sun itself is a star among billions, and your eyes' first gratitude, your eyelids' gentle closing, reminds you that you are gazing at a neighbor among many who glow in the vast sea of night. The sun's light takes about 8 minutes to traverse the space between you and the faraway star that warms your day. 8 minutes, the blink of a quiet moment, encompasses a journey that stars perform for you with every dawn you witness, a journey you share when you drift into sleep and dream about the skies. Third, the distances you hear mentioned in a whisper from time to time are not only maps, they are songs. The moon, our closest companion, rests about 384,400 kilometers away, yet feels almost touchable when the night is still and the telescope is patient. A single photograph of the moon for many of us can reveal more than a hurried glance in a busy evening. To examine its craters, to witness the soft shadows that cradle its basins, is to understand that even the closest celestial neighbor bears quiet stories of ancient collisions and patient erosion. You may let that thought settle, how intimate it feels to stand at the edge of a small belief and let it drift toward a larger wonder. Fourth, consider the Milky Way, which is not a single road, but a grand, spiraled river of stars. It is many tens of thousands of light years across, a galaxy that holds more stars than you can count in a single breath. And yet you may feel as if you are looking at a single line of light when you observe through a telescope. If you wish, you can imagine walking your gaze along the bright band of the Milky Way, as if you were walking along a shoreline where every wavelet is a star, each one with its own quiet history, all merging into a soft, endless melody that only the night can sing. Fifth, and perhaps most profound, the universe is old, unimaginably ancient. Scientists tell us its age is about 13.8 billion years, a number so large that it feels almost like standing at the edge of a horizon you cannot quite comprehend. Yet within that vastness, a small, intimate truth remains accessible through calm attention. Light travels at a speed of 299,792 kilometers per second, which is a pace that, for the sake of sleep, you can soften in your mind to something almost gentle, a coaxing whisper rather than a loud declaration. A galaxy you see through a telescope may be millions of light years away, and yet for a moment you can hold its image with your own breath, letting the idea tide in and out like a gentle sea. There is a sixth, subtler fact that the night itself can teach if you listen closely. The light you see from faraway stars is often ancient, sometimes arriving at your eye exactly as it was when these stars were young, perhaps when your own ancestors stood beneath a sky much the same as yours tonight, in an almost identical hush. The photons carry memory, and in the quiet darkness you become a receiver of those memories, a listener to stories that began long before you started to dream. If you wish, you may allow this memory to dissolve into your own breath, to settle into your chest as a peaceful weight that makes you feel both small and connected to something vast, something that welcomes your questions. The telescope, in its cool metallic breath, asks only that you remain present. It does not insist that you know every fact, but it gently provides little layers of understanding as you settle into your night. You may notice how the instrument itself, its tube, its lenses, its tripod, suggests a ritual more than a tool, a ritual of patience, a ritual of letting the daylight slips away and the world unfold in a quiet consonance. The telescope is a bridge between two kinds of sight. The sight of your eyes, which see light and color for a moment, and the sight of your inner world, which sees patterns and possibilities through contemplation. If you wish, you may walk across that bridge with me, step by step, breath by breath. Do you hear the night's soft soundtrack as the world lowers its voice for sleep? It is as if the sky itself lowers its volume in your presence, offering you safe passage toward rest. The stars do not hurry. They show you their brightness in a patient, steady rhythm, blinking with the regularity of a lullaby. You may let that rhythm become your own. Inhale, exhale, drift, settle, dissolve. You may invite a contemplative pause here, a tiny moment in which you pause the endless series of thoughts and let the moment itself be enough. Let us drift into a short shelter of mini stories, small and tender, to remind us that history and science are not distant, unapproachable things, but living memories that color the night with meaning. Imagine a lighthouse keeper's daughter, long ago, who learned to read the night not as a map of cold facts, but as a father's voice speaking softly from far away. She would tell herself stories of stars as stationary candles held up by a great sleeping forest, each candle a world with its own weather, its own seasons of dawn and dusk. She would listen to the telescope as if listening to a grandmother who has forgotten nothing of the sky's tenderness. The way a crescent moon can carve a sliver of silver across a quiet lake, or how Jupiter's moons can march in a patient procession that never rushes, never shouts, always gliding. Another tiny vignette, a child with a small, simple telescope, the kind that can fit in a backpack. The child sits on the grass, legs tucked, back straight, eyes wide with the longing to see a friend among the stars. Perhaps the first object is a bright planet, a neighbor in the solar neighborhood, and the child feels a pulse of awe. This is not just a bright dot. It is a world you could imagine visiting, a place where your thoughts could travel with a single thought. The parent or guardian speaks in hush-filled encouragements, saying, in effect, "You may dream here, you may listen here, you may follow the thread of light wherever it leads." The night nods in agreement, and the dream grows a speech of its own, a soft, patient language that invites you to sleep with wonder as your companion. You may notice how your senses align with the telescope's patient tempo. Your breathing slows to match the cadence of a long astronomical dusk. Your shoulders release their tension, the jaw loosens a fraction, the hands rest open, not clenched, on the blanket of silence. In this union of instruments and breath, you become a witness to the sky's extended patience. The horizon becomes a line you can walk along with your gaze, a shore where the sea of stars glitters with possibilities. You may choose to allow your body to settle deeper, to sink into a quiet seat of sleep where every thought has a gentleness about it, where even the word wonder softens into a whisper. As you settle, consider a handful of small, useful facts that blend with the rest of the night's soft music. The first is that the speed of light sets a tempo for the cosmos. The light you see from distant objects is not a present moment, but a memory arriving after a journey across space. This is not a loss, it is a gift, because it allows you to meet the stars as they were long before you. The second fact is that many galaxies swirl in a cosmos that is expanding, and this expansion is measured by a redshift, a stretching of light that you could imagine as the universe giving the night a slightly warmer, deeper hue over eons. You may breathe gently and consider this. The night's color changes with the universe's grand movement, and your own sleep can feel like a quiet hinge between stillness and motion, between what is and what might become. A third fact you may cradle softly concerns the moon. The moon's surface bears the testimony of countless ancient collisions, and when you look at it through the telescope, you are literally meeting a memory of long-ago events that shape the earth you sleep on tonight. You may allow the moon's stillness to touch your own stillness, like a bell that has ceased ringing and simply rests in its own reverberation, inviting you to rest along with it. The fourth fact. Our galaxy, the Milky Way, glows with intricate structure, a barred spiral whose bright center hints at a dense, crowded heart of stars. There are not only points of light, but patterns and flows, a choreography of celestial bodies moving through time. Let this pattern be a lullaby you can follow with your imagination, a soft map that calms rather than perplexes. If more facts arise, you may take them as gifts to tuck into your sleeve for later, or as small lanterns to shine toward tomorrow's dreams. The important thing is not to collect them all at once, but to allow them to drift through your awareness like feathers in a gentle current. You may softly remind yourself, you are allowed to be curious, you are allowed to rest, you are allowed to be here now, listening to the night's slow, patient heart. And now a final, tender weave of science and story to settle into your sleep like a final, warm blanket. The earliest telescopes were relatively simple devices, a few lenses arranged to focus light and magnify images. The first purpose of such devices was practical and quiet, to watch the heavens more clearly, to bring distant pinpricks of light into more recognizable patterns. Then came the deeper invitation of science, not to control the night, but to learn how to feel at home within it, to learn how to witness the universe's grand scale without losing your own sense of place. You may sense this shift as you breathe, that the telescope's mission is not conquest, but companionship, not possession, but partnership in the ongoing conversation between human curiosity and celestial mystery. Would you like to test a small ritual before you drift fully into sleep? You may pause here for a contemplative moment, a hush between two breaths. In this pause, you may imagine yourself as a patient observer who has learned a new technique for sleep. You soften your gaze, you soften your attention, you soften your will to interpret every thought. You allow the night to finish its own sentence, and you grant yourself permission to rest in the place where meaning is created not by rushing toward answers, but by lingering with questions long enough for them to dissolve into a softer, more spacious quiet. The moment you decide to surrender to sleep, you may do so with a simple, gentle ritual. Turn your attention to the feel of the bed beneath you, the weight of the blanket, the warm air at the corners of the room that invite your skin to relax. Let your shoulders sink toward your spine, as if your body is being held by the night's own quiet arms. You may whisper to yourself, "You are allowed to sleep now, you are permitted to drift, you are safe here with the quiet telescope and the night's patient listening." If you wish, you can imagine a distant star winking at you as a good night, a star choosing to hold its light gently until morning, a small beacon that says, "You may rest, you may dream, you may wake anew." And so the narration becomes your own gentle tide, a repeating lullaby that folds your thoughts into a softer shape. The universe, in its vastness, does not forget you. It simply allows you to see yourself as part of a long, luminous line of watchers who have looked up and learned to listen. The night's quiet continues, and with it, your breath deepens its own rhythm, until the body and mind synchronize with the cool hush outside and within. You may drift now with the sure knowledge that you are not merely between thoughts, but within a field of possibility where science and sleep share a common language, one that speaks softly of space, time, and the patient, generous act of noticing. If sleep is the destination, you may travel there with the telescope still by your side as a metaphor, a reminder that the night is not empty, but full of patient light that has waited long to be understood. You are allowed to rest, to dissolve the day's tension inside a quiet chamber of your chest, to let your eyes rest as your mind dissolves into the soft patterns of dream. The eyelids, the night, the telescope, all part of a single, quiet ritual of settling. And as you listen to the last tremor of the world's silhouette against the window, you may allow the quiet to hold you gently, the way a familiar star holds its own bright dot in a patient, forgiving sky. Picture a vast, quiet hospital built not of stone, but of starlight. The ceilings are the dark, indigo spaces between the stars, and the walls are the glittering stories that have been told by countless peoples across countless ages. Your window is the southern sky, and beyond it lies the patient, tireless attention of constellations, not mere shapes drawn on a map, but living, breathing narratives that have learned to hold the night, to cradle it, to make the hours feel longer and softer, as if time itself is being coaxed to settle, to slow, to float. If you listen closely, you might hear the gentle rustle of ancient stories tucking themselves into your ear, so that even as you drift, you hear a chorus of voices speaking in a language of stars and patience. Let us begin with a simple truth, a quiet fact that has been known by many who looked up and wondered. There are 88 recognized constellations. They are not random twinkles, but careful ceremonial patterns, the shape of a bear in a long winter, the outline of a hunter, a girl in a chair, a swan gliding across a mirrored lake of night. They are boundaries and stories, boundaries and doors, created by humans who wanted to know where the sea of stars ended and their own maps began. You are not simply looking at a random scatter of lights. You are listening to a curated chorus of lights that have become a language. The nurse within this chorus, let us call her Ursa Major, though not all know her as a bear, moves with a patient patience, constant in her duty to direct the weary traveler back toward rest, to remind the body how to unwind, to tell the mind, it is time to slow down and follow the slow, long curves of the night. As you sink a little deeper into your pillow, you might notice how the nurses listen not just with their eyes, but with their whole presence. The first fact you feel in your bones, soft and true, is this: there are 88 constellations officially acknowledged by those who study the heavens. They sit in their positions with a quiet authority, their outlines standing like lanterns in a corridor, guiding a way through the dark. But the shapes you see are not the entire truth about them. They are beginnings, invitations to imagine, to drift along the edges of legend and science, to drift along the edges of what is known and what is felt. The nurse in the room, the night nurse, does not demand that you memorize all 88 right now. She invites you to notice the way a pattern can serve as a doorway, a way to walk from wakefulness into dreamscape. So as you listen, let your attention rest upon a single cluster, a bright, steady point in a sea of points, and breathe with it. Now, while we're here, let us wander a little along the corridor of facts, not to wake you with numbers, but to remind your sleeping mind that knowledge can be a soft pillow, a light quilt settling around you. The first gentle fact is not loud or imposing, but it is a sturdy, practical truth. The constellations are patterns upon the sky that aid humans in organizing what they see. They are not physical structures in space, like mountains or rivers. Rather, they are lines our ancestors drew in their minds, connecting bright stars into memorable figures so that a traveler might say, if I follow this line, I will find a river of night hours that leads toward dawn. The nurse holds that line for you now, not as a map you must memorize, but as a thread to follow when your attention begins to wander and you need a soft purpose to lean into. Stillness settles in as you drift deeper, and the air between you and the stars becomes cooler, more expansive. The second gentle fact touches the air with a cooler breath. Constellations are not rigidly fixed across millions of years. The sky is a living, breathing theater that changes with time, even if your night is still. Over long cycles, the great waltz of procession, the positions of stars shift, the seasons of the sky rotate their moods, and their moods rotate again. It is a slow, almost imperceptible drift, like the way a memory can tug at you in the middle of the night and fade again before you can fully grasp it. The Great Bear's tail is not in exactly the same place as it was 1,000 years ago, and Polaris, the pointer to the north for many generations, will not always be the steadfast beacon it is today. The nurse's calm voice tells you to listen closely to that slow drift, not to fear it, but to notice how time moves through every star, through every breath you take, through every desire to stay still and every impulse to drift away. As the night hums along, you realize a third useful, comforting fact. There is a simple distinction between constellations and asterisms. An asterism is a recognizable pattern made from stars that belong to one or more constellations. The Big Dipper, for example, is a cherished asterism within Ursa Major. It is not a separate constellation, but a familiar shape that many people know by heart. The nurse's gentle laughter might come in the form of a short, soft reminder. You do not need to know every boundary, you only need to know where to rest. The Big Dipper is a doorway, not a doorframe. You can lean into that doorway and step into a circle of remembering without feeling compelled to memorize all of the surrounding walls. Notice how your shoulders relax as you consider the difference between a line on a chart and a doorway into a story. The mind, like the night, likes to be navigated by simple, comforting landmarks. Another quiet fact slides in with the current of the night. The sky is divided into a band called the zodiac, a ring around the heavens along the path of the sun as it travels through the year. This is not a single line, but a corridor that moves as the year turns. Within this band, the bright planets, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and sometimes Mercury, play along as wanderers, audible in the night to those listening with the right patience and the right eyes. Imagine a wheel of seasons turning, and in that wheel, you can trace how the constellations near the ecliptic, where the sun seems to travel, shine with a particular intensity at different times of year. The nurse's touch here is to remind you that time has a rhythm, that the stars do not simply glitter in one moment, but reveal themselves gradually as the world tilts and the night grows deeper. You are riding that wheel too, in your own way, moving through the hours of sleep as if they were a quiet caravan across a desert of dreams. There is a fourth fact that is both practical and poetic, a bridge between science and story. The stars within a constellation are often far apart in space. Some are near neighbors, others separated by dozens of light years. Yet our eyes see them close together because the vast distances collapse in our perception when we look up. It is a reminder that perception is a kind of magic, a sleight of hand remarkable enough to lull a mind back toward rest. The nurse leans closer and whispers a small lesson. Perception can create unity where there is separation, and unity can cradle you as you fall asleep. When you observe the sky with patience, you learn that the attributes we love in a constellation, the way a line of stars can resemble a hunting figure, a myth, a swan, are often the product of two things: the human tendency to imprint stories onto bright points, and the physical reality that distant suns share a common cadence of light and color, even if they live in utterly different corners of the universe. The sight becomes a meditation on connection, a lullaby sung by light. Let me tell you a little, almost private, story of a constellation that lives in many hearts: Orion. In one culture, Orion is a mighty hunter whose figure is stretched across the sky in a graceful bow, the belt of 3 stars hanging like a string of beads across a night stage. In another culture, the same stars might serve a different song, perhaps as a ritual dancer or a seasonal marker. Yet the effect is the same, a narrative that gathers the night and offers it a gentle shape to hold on to. When you listen to Orion's outline, you are listening to a patient, healing story that travels through time, crossing oceans of language and centuries of memory. The nurse's touch here is to remind you that myths and science share a common purpose. They help a mind endure the long hours, they help a body settle into the smooth rhythm of the night, and they give your breath something to anchor to as it moves in and out, in and out, in and out. Another quiet corridor in this hospital of stars is Cassiopeia, the queen set high in the sky, a W or M if you tilt your head in the right way. When you rest, Cassiopeia becomes a chair in the sky, the throne from which the night looks down with a compassionate gaze. She has seen the seasons change for 2,000 years and more, and yet she remains a patient witness to your own shifting state. Perhaps a voice within you asks, what is the purpose of such constellations, if not to remind us that even the most regal among us must bow to fatigue and choose rest over restless movement? The answer, slowly threaded through your breath, might be that stories, like sleep, have to be allowed to take their own sweet time. The nurse's whisper here is not an order, but an invitation. You are allowed to rest in a story that has endured longer than any single memory, a story bigger than a night, but always ready to cradle a night's end. You could wander further along the corridors and meet Cygnus, the swan gliding along a celestial river. The Milky Way, a broad, luminous thread, serves as the water upon which this swan moves, as though dreaming of gentler currents. The color of Cygnus can be imagined, a pale brightness that seems to standing still while the world passes by. Imagine how the breeze brushes against the bird's feathers as it glides. The sensation is soft on the skin, cool and quiet. The swan's patience mirrors your own as you listen to the slow, inexorable progress of your own breathing. The fact tucked away here is this: constellations are often named for mythic beings, but their stars are not bound to the stories. They drift through space, each light a different traveler, and the narrative is a human composition laid over a wandering universe. The nurse's care is to remind you that myth and science can share a bed at night, letting curiosity rest beside calm, letting imagination drift beside observation, until both are ready to close their eyes and dream. And then there is Lyra, the little harp, almost a whisper against the black. The harp sounds in your imagination with strings of starlight. The brighter star, Vega, sings an almost perfect pitch that invites your breath to slope downward, to follow its harmony into a slower tempo. The night becomes a concert hall where the room is perfectly still, and your own body is the audience member who has learned to listen with every sense. The fact here is that stars have colors that tell us about their temperatures. Blue-white stars are hotter, orange and red stars are cooler by comparison. You do not need to memorize each color for any test. You only need to notice how the verse of light changes as you drift, little clues about the physical world that become soft metaphors for your own changing state. As you listen to Lyra, you feel a gentle lift in your chest, as if the sound itself is a soft wind lifting your worries away, and you settle deeper into the bed, deeper into the night, deeper into the sense that you belong to a story larger than your waking day. And yet there are practicalities too that the nurse would like you to know without fretting over details. The stars we see each evening are not arranged by whim alone. The night, you could say, has a library of patterns that were written down long ago in the old languages, and later refined by careful observers who used their eyes to learn the sky's language. The modern fact is that these constellations have precise boundaries, notations on a celestial map, that define their shapes for astronomers and stargazers alike. They are not only pictures painted across the night canvas, but standardized shapes recognized by science, a quiet, enduring accord among people who study light and time. The nurse's gentle instruction here is not to memorize a list, but to appreciate the sense of order that allows a person to look up and feel, even in sleep, that there is a friendly, comprehensible system to lean into. It is a reassurance, like the soft pressure of a hand at the small of your back, guiding you to a more comfortable, more settled posture. In this same breath, let us consider the way navigation once hinged on the sky. Sailors and travelers looked up to find their way by bright stars and the pole star, a steady beacon during treacherous nights. Polaris, the North Star, is tied to Ursa Minor, the Little Dipper, and though it is cited as a reliable compass in many stories, it is not the most luminous star in the sky by day or by night. Its brightness is a gift of direction, not of physical dominance, and over long spans of time, thousands of years, the position of Polaris will shift relative to the axis of Earth. The nurse's caution here is not to worry about paperwork, but to notice the gentle, patient truth. Even the tools we rely on change, and that change can become a source of comfort rather than fear. The sky is a patient teacher. It does not demand that you understand everything right away, only that you continue to breathe and to watch, to notice how a small piece of the cosmos can be both a guide and a friend as you drift towards sleep. As the night deepens and the hours grow longer in your mind, you may sense a fifth soft, instructive truth begin to hum in the background: the colors of stars. You have likely dreamed in color before. Stars contribute to those colors in their own way. A star's color tells a tale of temperature and age, of chemical composition and destiny. The blue-white glow of certain stars speaks of heat and youth in the cosmos, while the warm, amber and red glows remind you of aging light that has traveled far and endured much. This knowledge, tucked into the quiet at the edge of sleep, does not threaten rest, but enriches it. It tells you that even the cold, distant lights can speak to you in a language of warmth when you listen with your entire being: the ears, the skin, the breath, the heart. The nurse's soft counsel: let the colors of the stars wash over you like a gentle tide, letting every color dissolve into one another until there is nothing left to do but to be present in the moment of now, seated at the edge of sleep. In the length of this tale, we must acknowledge the human hunger to tell stories and to keep records. The constellations are a blend of myth, memory, and measurement. The 88 constellations are a modern convention, an agreement among scientists and stargazers that makes the sky legible. Yet the stories wrapped around those stars, Orion's belt and hunting stance, Cassiopeia's W, the swan and the harp, rain down through generations like a gentle rain that cools the skin and invites a sigh. The nurse would say, "Can you feel the gentle rain? It's not rain to be fought, but rain to be welcomed, to be listened to be let in as you sleep." The old stories are not just relics of a bygone era. They are a shared practice of human attention. To look, to tell, to remember, to rest. And resting is the point here in this long corridor of the night, where the body gradually gives over to gravity and the mind gives over to drift. You might wonder how these patterns relate to your own life as you drift towards sleep. They relate in a language that your body can understand, a language of settling and softening. The sky is a mirror, a patient tutor who says, "You can hold on to your anxieties for a while if you must, but notice how the night invites you to surrender them, gently and consistently, until they shrink to a thread and then dissolve altogether into the quiet air around your pillow." The final fact I want to leave with you tonight is not a number or a boundary or a season's map, but a suggestion, a little invitation. You can practice a small ritual of watching. When you wake in the long middle of the night, or when your day returns with its own noise, you can recall the sense of being watched over by those patient lights, by the constellations that stand like night nurses at the edge of your bed. They do not hurry you, they do not scold you for waking, they simply remind you of the larger, slower hours of the world and of your place within them. It is a gentle permission to rest, to drift, to dissolve once again into a sea of quiet. So I invite you now to imagine the room around you as a quiet observatory, and you as the patient in a chair by the window. The night outside is a supervisor of calm. The darkness thickens into a velvet curtain, the stars become a whispered chorus, and the constellations, your devoted nurses, reach across the room with their serene, unhurried presence. They lean closer, not to pry into your thoughts, but to cradle them, to let them rest as your breath settles. Do you hear the soft murmuring, the soft, almost inaudible hum of the sky listening as you listen? It is the language of rest, the dialect your nerves understand when you permit them to slow, to soften, to settle. The journey through this night is not a race. It is a patient, winding river that carries you toward a coastline you cannot yet see but can feel, a shoreline of dreams and quiet, safe sleep. If you are still awake in a moment, bring your attention to the breath again. Inhale the color of the night, the blue-black hush that contains a million stories, the subtle glow of distant suns, the memory of old sailors who learned to trust the sky and the sea in equal measure. Exhale any tightness, any tension in the neck, the jaw, the shoulders. Let your body yield a little more to the support beneath you, to the room's cool air, to the soft sounds that live beyond the walls. A flicker of distant traffic, a night bird, a sigh from the building itself. And as you breathe, allow the sense of those constellations to widen in your inner vision. Be aware not just of shapes, but of the quieting of your own voice, of your own need to be heard by the night rather than by a noise-filled world. The night nurses continue their vigil, and you are their patient, their charge, their quiet miracle. If you wish, you may speak no words at all, or you may whisper a single question to the ceiling, a small inquiry that acknowledges your humanity. What is the next moment that needs your gentle attention? And the ceiling, in its vast, forgiving way, might reply with a patient lullaby, a soft answer carried on a thread of starlight. The next moment is a breath, the next breath is a pause, the next pause invites you to settle and drift once more into sleep. The night keeps your counsel in the gentle hush that breathes through the room, through your ribs, through the space between each heartbeat. And now, as the night grows deeper still, keep a soft, listening heart. There is more to learn from the constellations, but their lesson comes slowly with time. They teach resilience, to be bright and visible, yet not to shout over the quiet. They teach patience, to be arranged in shapes that tell stories, but to hold their places with a tenderness that never demands more than you can give yourself. They teach humility, to be vast, to be ancient, to be part of a cosmos older than your waking concerns, and to stay near enough to remind you that your own breath matters, that your own rest matters, that your own sleep matters. So drift now, if you can, with grace. Let the stories of Orion and Cassiopeia, the harp of Lyra and the swan of Cygnus, continue to keep you company as you ease into the deepest hours of your night. Let the Big Dipper's trail be a path that leads you toward a shore of soft dreams. Let the wheel of the zodiac turn gently in your mind, a reminder that life is a sequence of cycles, each phase a chance to shed a little more tension and invite a larger, more forgiving truth to inhabit your awareness. You deserve rest. You deserve the calm that comes after a day well-traveled. You deserve the quiet companionship of the heavens that urge you towards stillness and release. Now, if you drift, drift with ease. If you stay awake a little longer, stay with the gentle, unhurried cadence of the night, listening to the soft, distant murmur of the stars. The constellations are not going anywhere. They are here to stay, to observe, to guide, to soothe. They are night nurses who have learned the art of staying present, of offering a steady, comforting touch, of knowing when to speak and when to listen. They are patient, they are kind, they are ancient and enduring, and so are you. Breathe in, breathe out. Let the body settle, the mind slow, the heart ease. Let sleep come softly, like a tide that comes in and then recedes, leaving behind a shoreline of dreams and a tranquil, renewed you. In the soft light, the first thing you notice is not a single star, but a line. The line where the heavens and a careful human attempt to map them meet. For centuries, people have looked at the sky and tried to tell a story about where things are, how far away they might be, and when the days will return to their orderly rhythm. The old maps were drawn with chalk on the ground, with furrows of memory, with a mapmaker's quiet hands tracing circles and lines. They drew a great sphere that encases the world, a celestial sphere, and on that inner dome they set the stars like small, bright pins. A sphere, a circle, a boundary beyond which there is more night and more light at the same time. And in this map, you learn a language, an ordinary language of angles and hours and degrees that becomes a lullaby when spoken in the dark. If you allow your breath to widen, you can hear the names of the things that were first imagined as coordinates. Long ago, a traveler with a rope and a compass looked up and wondered how to say where it all lies when you cannot walk there by foot. The concept grew. The sky has a center and a horizon and a circle where everything rides, a circle that never ends, a boundary that maps the world with a kind of mercy. The tool that grew alongside this idea is the celestial coordinate system, a patient set of rules that tell you where a star sits in the sky, not in distance, but in direction. A star's position can be described by two numbers, like the code to a lock. One is right ascension, measuring along the celestial equator as the sky turns, and the other is declination, measuring how far north or south you are from that same equator. The heavens are not scattered at random. They are arranged in a way that resembles a gentle architecture, a city planned by patience itself. Do you hear the soft ticking of time in those two numbers? They are reminders that the night does not stay still. The earth turns, the night travels around the globe, and what you see moves ever so slightly, as if the universe prepares a quiet performance just for your eyes. When you watch long enough, a small truth lands softly. Mapping the sky is less about finding a place and more about learning to listen to the sky's own sense of place. You are learning with the instruments of a long, kind history, the arc of a hand, the line of a star, the circle you trace with your gaze as your breath follows. Tonight, your mind offers a gentle curiosity, and curiosity asks you questions that are not meant to stress, but to soothe. What if the sky is a shared notebook, and every sign, every constellation, every faint smear of light is a note dropped by someone who looked up and thought, if I could only tell the future from the past, maybe I could rest easier. And you, listening, answers softly, I am listening. I am ready to learn how to drift with this map, to follow the lines that connect a hand's drawing to a star's enduring glow. In the margins of this map, you discover another type of light, not the blazing brightness of a sun, but a patient, consistent glow, the Milky Way, a broad river of starlight that winds across the sky. It is not the only thing that shines, but it is a reminder that we live inside a galaxy, a neighborhood of countless suns, a chorus of darkness and fire that has learned to sing in many keys at once. The Milky Way is our own galaxy's night breath, a faint band of light that glows brighter where the sky is dark enough to listen. If you tilt your head and allow your eyes to become alert to the faint, you can begin to sense its presence as a soft, milky ribbon, not a single line, but a feeling of continuity, a reminder that what we see above is part of a larger, older dream. Occasionally, a more intimate memory slips in, a small mini-story of a night traveler who carried a simple map and a quiet resolve to leave a trail for others who would come after. The traveler walked along the edge of a desert where the stars were many, and the horizon was a pale, pale whisper. When the traveler looked up, the sky offered a line of bright anchors, Orion's belt, the great hunter's guideposts. Yet the traveler's map did not require wealth of distance. It was a map of direction, a promise that if you follow the pointers, you may reach a place you cannot yet name. The traveler would set those stars against the compass of the night and say softly, if I can mark this position, perhaps I can teach a child to find the way home when the road grows long. And so the map grows, not with the pace of a march, but with the tempo of a lullaby, each star a gentle syllable, each constellation a sentence that ends in a period of rest. Now a second thread enters the night, a thread that carries the weight of history without ever losing its gentleness. The earliest cartographers of the sky did not have the luxury of modern gadgets, yet they possessed something more delicate. An eye trained to notice patterns and a patience that allowed a single star once seen to echo across many nights. They used markings from the sky itself, bright points and faint smears, to tell a story of seasons and navigation. Among the stars they named, you can hear the names of figures that existed in ancient minds and linger in our collective memory. Yet those names become softly taken up by your own memory when you listen with quiet breaths. This is not the cold arithmetic of a telescope's measurement. It is a living tradition in which science and poetry share the same room, swapping ideas like coins that glow under lamplight. To ground you a little in the physics without breaking the hush, you can let 4 or 5 facts drift by, wrapped in the same velvet as a night cloak, none of them meant to wake you, all of them meant to bear company. First, the celestial sphere, that imagined dome, where the heavens circle around a central vantage point. It is a way to keep sense of place when you cannot walk through the sky but must walk through memory. Second, the coordinate pair, the two numbers we use to say where something lies in the sky. The right ascension moves as the Earth turns, slowly counting the hours of the night, while declination tells you how far north or south from the equator you stand on that same sky map. Third, the ecliptic, that curving line in the sky along which the sun appears to travel over the year, with the zodiac marks lining its path. Planets tend to wander near that path because they revolve in the same broad wheel of our solar system. Fourth, Polaris, the North Star, which helps travelers keep their bearings for now. It sits almost directly above the North Celestial Pole, a lonely beacon that does not move much, even as the world spins. Fifth, the Milky Way, which is not a river in the sky, but a view into our own galaxy, a reminder that we inhabit a vast family of stars, all of them dancing in a shared orbit around something we cannot easily see from here, but which science gently reveals, layer by layer, with time and patience. These facts, you realize, are not burdens, but beams you can lean on as you drift. They are not a lecture, but a soft scaffolding, a way to hold on to something real while you learn to feel what real means when you are drifting towards sleep. You may pause and say to yourself, I am allowed to hold knowledge lightly, like a feather in the night air. And the night answers with a whisper, yes, you are allowed to rest while you know. The mind, when it has learned to map, sometimes wonders about distances. How far away is that glittering node of light? How long does it take for that glow to reach your eye? What could that mean for your own sense of time? Parallax enters the conversation as a quiet curiosity. Parallax is the tiny shift you notice when you hold a finger in front of your face and close one eye, then the other. Objects at different distances seem to move against the background at different rates. In the real sky, measuring parallax is how scientists began to judge how far stars actually are, not just how bright they look from here. It took many, many seasons and a patient chorus of mathematicians to confirm that some stars are reached by light that has traveled for years, even centuries, to greet your eyes in this moment of night's rest. It is a humbling thing. We sit beneath an immense, ancient tapestry, and the light we see is a letter sent long ago, folded and mailed on the wings of time. And yet, even with such grand measurements, the night remains intimate. The sky is not just a field of distant suns, but a gallery of intimate moments. In one tiny corner of this map, a story appears again, perhaps the story of a sailor who once navigated by the stars alone, letting the constellations be their quiet lighthouses as a sea of black and blue stretched out to the horizon. They watched for the rising and setting of certain bright stars and used them to mark routes across unknown waters. They did not hurry, they listened for the rhythms of the tide within the stars themselves. You can imagine their breath slowing as the ship returned to harbor, the stars settling into their nightly positions and promising that another voyage would come with another dawn. The memory of that voyage becomes a metaphor for your own night. You set a course, you adjust your chart, you remain calm, and eventually you arrive at a new resting place. As you rest, you may also notice the practice of the astronomers who came before us, the ones who grouped stars into constellations, the ones who used bright patterns to guide harvests and rituals and travel. They could see animals and heroes in the night, not because the patterns were fixed by law, but because the human eye loves a story. A hunter, a healer, a mother, a child. These stories map not only the sky but the heart. The great bear, the great hunter, the wings of a bird, a water snake curling across the dark. Each shape is a pause in a long meditation on what it means to look up and to belong to something larger than yourself. The shapes stand like stair steps of a dream, each one inviting you to climb a little, to notice a vertex of meaning, to let your mind wander from one star to the next, as if you were tracing a nervous system of light through the night. The act of mapping the sky, you realize, is an act of gentleness toward the future as well as toward the past. When you align with a star's position at a given moment, you are participating in a tradition that spans thousands of years and reaches into the possibility of future discoveries. The map you are walking tonight is not just a relic. It is a living instrument that invites new travelers to chart what is still unknown, what remains to be seen with new eyes, perhaps with new instruments, perhaps with new software or telescopes yet to be imagined. But the core of it remains the same. A patient invitation to rest, to listen, to allow the mind to travel along the lines of the sky with the same ease you would wander along a quiet corridor. In this latitude of dream, you find a small routine for yourself, a gentle ritual of navigation that does not require a compass, but uses the body's own compass, the breath. Breathe in and feel as if the night were drawing you inward toward the center of your own quiet. Breathe out and imagine you are letting go of a line drawn from your own heart to the sky above, a line that once carried worry and now carries relief. With each breath, your body aligns more closely with the slow rhythm of the universe. The map becomes not a roadmap of distance, but a map of attention, a testament to how much you can notice when you are not rushing toward the next thing, but letting the next thing arrive to you. Sometimes a single star will catch your eye and pull your focus with a gentle insistence. It might be a star of a particular brightness that somehow seems to be insisting on a moment of recognition, a moment of inclusion in your inner gallery. In that moment you might ask yourself, what is the distance from this star to the Earth? You might wonder about the light that leaves it and the light that returns to you, a circle of exchange that binds you to something ancient and large. And as you wonder, you may realize that you do not need to know all the distances to be moved by the sight of it. The act of contemplation is itself a form of voyage, a slow travel through time and space that does not end in a single destination, but dissolves into the very practice of listening. As the hours drift, you notice how the mind does not need to hurry to understand. It can savor definitions and forget them, let them dissolve like sugar in warm tea, and then retrieve them again later in a gentler form. You can recall a moment when a line of text in an old astronomy book described the celestial sphere and how the heavens appear to rotate around a fixed point. You do not need to memorize every detail, but you can imagine the map as a living boundary, a boundary that you cross in your sleep, a boundary that grows with every new observation the world learns to make. The act of mapping becomes a meditation on patience itself, a practice that teaches you to slow down until the world reveals its patience to you as well. So you drift with the soft certainty that everything you need tonight is already here, arranged in the quiet order of a map that is both ancient and alive. The practice of celestial cartography teaches you how to be gentle with time. You learn to measure what you can know without forcing what you cannot measure, to treat every observation as a poem rather than a verdict, to treat every pause as a possibility rather than a lack. The night itself becomes a teacher who speaks in tides of memory and silence, who reminds you that rest is a form of knowing, that comfort is a form of wisdom, and that letting go is not giving up, but making room for the next light to appear. If you close your eyes for a moment and listen, you may hear an instrument somewhere far away, a distant telescope, a radio array, a soft crackle of signal crossing the void. The sound is not loud but meaningful, as though the universe itself were telling you a bedtime story about gravity and light and the quiet courage of inquiry. The story is not in numbers alone, but in the way those numbers come together to paint a scene. A sky that moves with you, a horizon that recedes as you breathe deeper, a constellation that shifts its anchor just enough to remind you that change is a gentle friend, not a foe. This is the art of watching, the sleepwalker's art, the art that says, you belong here, you belong to this night, you belong to the slow, patient history of looking up. The sleep that comes is not a blankness, but a soft, lucid drift. It is a gentle letting go of overthinking, a permit to let pictures fade and reappear in a kinder light. In this state, you may find yourself visiting the edges of the sky, not in search of proof or proof's shadow, but in search of stories that speak to your own night's weather. A cloud's edge brushing the horizon, a comet's tail in a distant memory, the slow, patient distribution of starlight across your own quiet body. The body learns to settle as the world's map enlarges around it. The mind learns to travel within the map's quiet corridors, discovering rooms where you can rest your head and feel the warm certainty that you are safe, that you are unhurried, that you are exactly where you need to be. So as you drift deeper, imagine this map becoming a living thing that leans closer, offering you a comfortable place to pause. It teaches you to measure not only distances, but also time spent in peace, to count breaths as a form of longitude, to let your awareness travel along the constellation's gentle curves like a boat wending to a quiet harbor. You may choose to follow a bright star across the sky's soft field, to let your focus rest on a familiar shape until its outline becomes a comforting friend rather than a distant point. You may let a small memory of your own life, perhaps a parent or a mentor who once pointed to the same sky, softly appear and settle into your chest like a partner for your sleep. In this way, the sleepy history of astronomy continues to unfold, a continuous thread woven through time, myth and measurement, wonder and method, dream and discipline. The history of mapping the sky is not merely about where the stars are. It is about how we learn to look with humility and patience, how we make space for what we do not yet know, how we hold the beauty of the unknown and let it gently illuminate us. You are a listener and a participant in this long, patient tradition. You are part of a lineage that includes cartographers of stars, navigators of seas seen only by memory, dreamers who trace the heavens with their hearts as much as with their hands. And if, as you listen to the quiet, you begin to hear a question forming in the depth of your restful mind, let it rise with ease. What will I notice tomorrow? What new detail will the night reveal if I stay patient and open? The answer, if it comes softly, as all answers do when they arrive in a room filled with the afterglow of a long, patient search. It may be a thought about your own place within the world, the way your own life sits within the vast map of the cosmos, an invitation to treat each day as a line on a map, each moment a coordinate that helps you travel toward rest again. Or it may be a memory of a star you once saw with awe, a memory that becomes an invitation to preserve wonder in your heart as you drift deeper into sleep. As sleep finally arrives, it comes as a soft closing of a door that never shuts, but always invites you to return. The map remains, a calm, luminous surface that holds your breath and your dreams in the same quiet trust. You are a traveler of the night, a reader of the dark, a steward of a tiny, luminous truth. That to map the sky is to learn how to map your own heart's quiet spaces. The stars keep their patient, ancient company, and you, in turn, keep your own restful company with them. The night grows deep, the map glows more faintly, and you find yourself cradled in a soft, endless light, a light that speaks in the language of rest. You are home, you are safe, you are exactly where you are meant to be, listening to the slow, celestial turning of time and the gentle, unwavering promise of sleep. The dawn is a whisper you can hear even through the velvet of night, a tremor at the edge of sleep that says, slowly, you have carried a lot without knowing. Hold your breath and let the sky breathe for you. The windows glow with a pale, patient light, not yet the bright insistence of day, but a soft promise that everything that has learned to wait can learn to wake gently. Tonight you are walking through a long, quiet corridor that stretches behind the hours, and at its far end, a lantern glows with patient history. It is not the lantern of a single moment, but a chorus of voices, a sleepy orchestra that has practiced listening to the night since people first looked up and asked, in a whisper, what is there beyond the dark? You may listen and you may rest, and you may let your questions float like smoke in the cool air. The first note in this hushful history is the ancient habitat of stars, the dawn-swept skies that our ancestors began to mark as if they were the shoreline of a vast, slow ocean. Long before maps could hold a city or a river, there were maps that held light. In the cities alongside rivers and deserts, people watched the same sky, and the sky did not belong to any one of them. It belonged to all of them, a shared floor where stories could settle. The constellations, the bright benches and quiet corridors of light were not merely pictures, they were clocks and calendars, a language by which time announced itself each season. The early observers did not just note where a star rose or set. They learned to measure seasons, to anticipate floods and harvests, to align the heart's own rhythms with the planet's slow, patient rotation. So you can begin by sensing the ancient invitation. You are allowed to drift toward the idea that the night is a library, its shelves stacked with light that has traveled for tens of thousands of years just to be seen by you now. Take a small, easy breath. You are permitted to stand still and listen. And in that listening, your ears might hear the tale of Hipparchus and the first careful pages of starlight. The Greeks, both practical and poetic, began to think of the heavens with a more precise whisper. They did not only marvel at the shapes in the sky, they began to measure them. Hipparchus, a careful observer of the night, compiled a star catalogue, the first of its kind to carry names and measurements, as if the heavens were a ledger and each star had a place in a ledger that humans could read with patient fingers. It is easy to drift here, to imagine him at a small desk, lamplit, writing down the position of a bright point, and noting its brightness as though it were a memory of a memory you have forgotten, but now remember again. In those pages, a score began to form, the magnitude scale. A star's brightness would become legible not only to awe, but to quiet understanding. You may let that concept enter you as a soft bell that tolls gently in your chest. Brightness quantified, a way to hold light without clenching it. It is safe to let numbers walk hand in hand with wonder. You do not have to choose one over the other. You may permit both in the same breath as you settle deeper into sleep. And then comes a name that travels with time, a bridge between night and day, a scene in which human curiosity decides to look closer, to look for cause and order. In a moment that would echo through centuries, Copernicus proposed that the sun, not the earth, stood at the center of the planetary festival. The idea was not a shout, but a patient invitation to reconsider where we stand in the vastness. The earth, this small blue tremor, and the other worlds were not the anchors of the cosmos. They were participants with their own orbits, circling a central star. It was a thought formed in quiet rooms, in letters and diagrams, perhaps with ash from a quiet fire curling into the air. If you should feel a flicker of resistance, you can soften it with the assurance that great shifts in perception often begin as small, almost invisible breaths in a room. You may consent to a larger perspective while remaining perfectly still in this moment. Two states that can live side by side as if they were two rivers running in the same valley. To widen the doorway between night and understanding, let us trace another thread of light through a different instrument and a different kind of patience. Before telescopes, there were tools that guided travelers by the stars across vast oceans, the astrolabe and the sextant. These devices stood as quiet tutors of navigation, teaching the sailor to measure altitude, to read the sky as a living map, to translate the heavens' tilt into the coordinates of a coastline, a harbor, a home. The art of celestial cartography, mapping the sky with careful lines and notes, was not simply an exercise in geometry. It was a way of mapping the heart's quiet spaces. When you lie back and feel the bed become a small ship, you can imagine steering by the starry compass, letting your breath rise and fall with the waves of the night. The sea and the sky share a language of angles and patience, a language that invites you to drift toward the horizon of sleep. And then, in the gentle algebra of time, a second kind of measurement slips into the story. The speed of light, a curtain of a measure that travels across the vastness of space. It took clever minds a long time to realize that light has a finite pace, that what we see is always a moment in the past, a whisper that left the source a little while ago. In the late 17th century, Romer, the Danish astronomer, observed that the timing of eclipses of the moons of Jupiter seemed to stretch and shrink as Earth moved relative to the rest of the solar system. The realization did not crash like thunder. It arrived as a patient, almost musical understanding that the universe has a tempo. The light we see tonight has traveled for years, perhaps longer than a human life, and in recognizing that, you may feel your own breath become a little slower, a little more generous. You are not chasing a moving target so much as aligning your own pace with a grander cadence, and that is a kind of sleep's medicine, to feel part of something larger and to let your worries loosen their grip. With these pieces in place, the ancient maps, the careful catalogues, the heliocentric dawn, the telescope's intimate discoveries, the seaward tools, the measurement of light's patience, and the celestial drift of time, the night becomes a classroom where the body learns a softer form of knowledge. You do not need to rush to conclusions or to conclusions about yourself. You may simply drift through the corridors of memory, gliding from one lantern to another, letting the soft light outline a path toward wakefulness that does not shout but hums. It is perfectly okay to linger on a sentence or a moment, to let a fact drift into the next, like a cloud dissolving into the next. The more you listen, the more your body learns to read the language of the stars as if it were a lullaby written in light. As you fold into the last quiet moments before morning, a sentence of history keeps returning with a gentle insistence. To watch the night sky is to learn how to watch one's own inner sky, the places where fear, hope, doubt, and possibility live, and where they soften when given time. You may practice that soft listening in the space of your own chest. Each breath is a little orbit, each exhale a tide drawing back to the shoreline of sleep. And if a thought rises, perhaps about a telescope or an old navigator's compass, you can greet it with a small smile, knowing that it has traveled from the ages and still rests in your presence, ready to dissolve when you invite it to. You have permission to let go of the need to understand everything tonight. You may simply allow the questions to drift, like vapor over a quiet lake, and your mind will settle as water settles after it has been disturbed. Now the dawn is gathering its light, not with a sudden blaze, but with a patient, pale glow that crawls across the ceiling and threads its way into the corners of the room. The room becomes a pale observatory, and you a patient observer of your own transition from night to day. The stars are still there, but their map begins to shrink back into the memory of night, and yet their presence remains, a soft thread tying your waking self to the previous hour's wonder. The history of astronomy continues to breathe in the spaces between thoughts. There is a sense that the night did not end with the black curtain falling. Rather, it released a quiet momentum, a momentum that you can carry with you as you awaken. You are invited to keep a portion of that momentum, a careful, unhurried curiosity, a trust in the slow, inevitable drift of things, a readiness to see the world with the same measured patience with which the stars were first traced across the heavens. If you wish, you may name a last small ritual to carry into your waking, to greet the first light as if it were a friend returning from a long voyage, to place a hand on your chest and feel the breath map a gentle latitude and longitude inside you, to whisper a single permission aloud, something like, "It is safe to settle," or "It is okay to drift with ease." The dawn's echo is not a verdict. It is a gentle invitation to begin anew with the same curiosity that once learned to chart the sky. You do not need to rush to conclusions about who you are or what you will become today. You only need to be here, listening, breathing, and letting the room soften around you. The history of the night sky, its maps, its measurements, its revolutions of thought, has slowed enough to accompany you into morning. And when you finally feel the world begin to brighten in earnest, you may allow your eyes to open to the soft-lined shapes of the room, the quiet sound of a house settling, the slow, patient rise of light in the distance. The night has given you a collection of small, timeless gifts, a catalogue of stars that once guided travelers and dreamers, a set of tools that helped people understand where they stood in the vastness, a reminder that even the grandest questions move with a patient tempo. Your mind can host these gifts as you begin to wake, like a shelf where a dozen tiny lanterns glow in a circle, ready to be carried to the day. It is okay if your thoughts still drift, if the edges of sleep cling a little longer, if your sense of time feels stretched as a sunrise ribbon. The dawn is the oldest kind of apology from the universe. We will not hurry you. We will not push you toward a definition of success or failure. We will simply invite you to wake into a morning where you carry this quiet science inside you, the history of watching the night sky as a companion that never truly leaves, but lingers, a soft, luminous thread you can tug gently whenever the world grows loud or fast. You may let your breath find its natural rhythm, settle into the bed's embrace, and listen for the faint, familiar echo of the dawn's soft promise that sleep and awakening can coexist in a single gentle breath, that the sky and your own heart share patient choreography, and that, in this moment, you are exactly where you are meant to be, perfectly allowed to drift, to float, and to settle into the morning with ease. Close your eyes and listen to the night breathe around you. Do you hear the hush of a world that keeps turning even while your thoughts settle into stillness? The moon lies in wait above the quiet, a pale lamp hanging in the velvet air. We will travel softly, not racing toward an ending, but gliding toward a place where memory and wonder lounge side by side, one small flame and 1,000 sea salt nights. You may let the room dissolve into a broader sky, a dome of velvet where every star is a slow, patient teacher. In the stillness of these moments, you notice an antique instrument, an astrolabe, resting on a table like a sunken coin from an ancient voyage. It is not merely metal and lattice, it is a map that learned to dream. The word astrolabe itself feels like a long sigh, a circular sigh, a disk that spins with the possible. It is a device that, in its quiet precision, invites you to imagine how a mind once tried to measure the height of a dreaming sky. The reti, a delicate metal starry lace, sits over the golden face, and in that lace you see the constellations as if pinned to a celestial ceiling. The mother of all questions sits here, not loud but true. Where do the stars lie at a given moment? And how can a person, sentient and curious, translate that moment into a sense you can hold in your palm? As you breathe, you feel the instrument becoming lighter, not lighter in weight, but lighter in significance, a reminder that knowledge, like the night, can be a kind of quiet cloud you float through. Let the astrolabe drift into your hands, if you wish, or into your thoughts. It is a small partner for a traveler who loves to listen. The device could be used to measure the altitude of celestial bodies, the height of a star above the horizon, so that you could tell where you were on the curve of the world. It is a tool born of many hands across many centuries, from the ancient Mediterranean to the enduring libraries of the East, from desert caravans to quiet harbors where ships tuck against the quay. Its purpose was practical and poetic at once, to read the heavens in order to find the earth. And as you hold the memory of this instrument, you realize that this is precisely what the night asks you to do. Read the heavens to find your own inner compass, your own quiet map of breath and belief. A wave of calm moves through your chest as you tilt your head toward the window. The night is a soft teacher of patience. Do you feel the breath settle into the body, a tide that responds to the moon's own pull? The moon's phases become a gentle liturgy for your sleep. New moon, dark as a candle's breath. Crescent, a thin smile of light. First quarter, a square of glow that suggests the act of building. Full moon, a circle that fills with the light of many stories. And back again to the waning phases that invite you to release what no longer serves your journey. This lunar cycle is more than a cycle of light. It is a reminder that attention itself can be cyclical, that focus and rest trade places like friendly neighbors at dusk. In the earliest days of watching the night, people learned to map not only the sky, but the way a human heart might feel when it learns to read it. The starry vault became a ceiling under which stories of travelers and dreamers grew roots. There is a small, intimate tale tucked into every star, a story of a navigator who learned to tell time by the rising and setting of a bright marker in the heavens, such as a particular bright star that climbs into view as night deepens. It's a slow art, a patient habit, to mark the hours by the quiet procession of lights above, to float along the dark until the mind finds its own rhythm and the breath becomes a lighthouse for the drift. Can you feel that? The sense that time itself can be read as gently as a text, not to hurry you, but to guide you toward your own inner timetable. The lull of sleep as a star that steadies the ship of your waking life. If you listen closely, you can hear small micro-stories murmuring within the larger tale. The scholar in a stone library, lantern pale and kind, tracing lines on parchment as if the handwriting itself could settle a storm in the mind. He hums a quiet tune of the stars' coordinates, and the ink seems to shimmer with the same patience the night offers now. He imagines the stars as numbers on a celestial clock, each one a moment in which you, the observer, could pause and take a breath, a moment to let meaning waft in like sea mist. Another vignette threads through the air. The sailor who once stood on a rocking deck, the world a map of rust and salt, watching the moon pull the tides and the ship's ropes to sing with the dark. The sailor learns to time the crests of waves to the moon's rising, a craft of patience, a discipline of listening. You might invite that memory into your own night, how you can listen to your breath with the same careful attention, letting it rise, then fall, then rise again, like a tide that does not hurry but returns with a whisper of foam. The moon teaches a metaphor of steady return, of cycles that comfort rather than confine. In the spaces between these mini stories, you feel a handful of facts drift into your awareness as softly as moths near a candle, not shouted, but carried on the lamplight of your mind. First, the astrolabe's purpose and its elegance. A disc with a movable plate, the mater, and the rete that shows the placement of stars. It could be used to measure the altitude of stars, how high they sit above the horizon, so you might know your latitude, your north, or your south, as if the sky itself could orient your footsteps. The device is a confluence of science and poetry, where geometry and the quiet magic of stars converge. It is not only a tool of calculation, but a companion on a long, patient voyage into understanding, an invitation to slow your breath and let the mind drift with the heavens. Third, the moon's gravity is a quiet force behind our tides. It tugs at the oceans with a mercy that is almost maternal, sending ripples to kiss the shores and coax the earth to breathe in a slower, deeper rhythm. You might rest your fingertips on your own chest and feel your breath align with that slow, lunar pulse, as if your heartbeat were echoing the moon's gentle pull. In a dreamlike sense, the moon makes time tangible. You can feel time as a current that moves through you, just as the sea moves in its endless dialogue with the moon above. Fourth, the moon's journey is tethered to the sunlit day as well as to the dark of night. The moon rises in the east as the sun sinks in the west, and sometimes, when you do not hurry, you can glimpse the world double, two influences at once. Daylight and moonlight sharing the same space. And there are moments, like the moment of a penitent, quiet dusk, when the moon and the sun align in what poets call an eclipse, not to erase one another, but to reveal the delicate balance of light and shadow that governs all things. This is a reminder that balance, too, is a form of rest, a way for the mind to settle into a state where light and dark share a peaceful frontier. Fifth, a gentle note about historical practice. Long ago, scholars and navigators used to determine the time of night and their position by the stars, sometimes with the help of devices like the astrolabe. But these acts were performed with careful, patient attention, as if every observation were a prayer offered to the night. A tiny, almost ceremonial cadence was learned: observe, record, compare with a map, and adjust. The process itself becomes a form of mindfulness, an art of noticing rather than an art of conquering. In your own life, you can replicate this practice by noticing what the night brings to your senses, then letting the memory settle in the quiet space of your chest. Another thread to accompany the drift is a small micro-story about the quiet library at the edge of a town, where an old astronomer keeps a leather atlas open on a table, the pages smelling faintly of rain and ink. The astronomer speaks softly, telling a child that the same stars that guided sailors long ago now guide the dreamer inward, toward a harbor that is not made of water, but of breath and thought. The child's eyes widen at the sight of a dot of light that seems to move, to breathe, to answer questions. The astronomer smiles and says that every point of light is a question, and every question carries a quiet answer. You can learn to listen to what the night is saying by letting your own breath become a kind of listening device. Allow the stars to be your tutors, you are told, and let your heartbeat be the metronome for your sleep. You may imagine being there with the child and the astronomer, seated beneath a vaulted ceiling that glitters with pinholes of light, the air smelling faintly of old paper and brass. If you lean closer, you can hear the soft whisper of gears turning within the astrolabe's heart, the way a small machine can become a gateway to a much larger reality. The room's quiet collects in your shoulders, inviting them to descend, to loosen. Your jaw unclenches, your tongue relaxes, releasing a tiny sigh that blends with the sighing night outside your window. You are safe here, in a space where curiosity is a kind of lullaby and knowledge is a kind of shelter. As the night grows a second skin around you, the narrator's voice, your own inner voice, offers gentle invitations to sensory experiences that coax the mind toward deeper rest. Breathe in and notice the cool air against the skin of your lips. Breathe out and feel the room soften, the bricks of the wall releasing their grip on the outside world. Hear the quiet sound of your own breathing, a soft turn of air that begins in the nostrils and travels to the chest, then settles at the back of the throat in a comfortable, easy hush. The sensation is a small boat that you sail toward the shore of sleep, a craft that rocks gently with every exhale. In this drift, you are not merely an observer of history, but a participant in the long tradition of those who slept beneath the same stars, who listened to the moon's quiet arithmetic as a kind of bedtime arithmetic for the soul. You might imagine yourself as a scent of rain on ancient stone, a scholar with a lantern in the courtyard, or a traveler who has learned to rely on the night's own timetable rather than the day's clock. The night invites you to participate in a ritual you have always known, though you may not have thought to name it. The ritual of resting with wonder, of letting what you have learned become a soft gravity that holds you near the bedrock of sleep. When your thoughts begin to wander toward a problem you could not solve in the daylight, you can pause and ask a simple question. What if quiet is a form of knowledge and rest is a form of navigation? The mind that seems to hurry can still itself by attending to the cadence of your breath and the slow, patient glow of the lunar face in your imagination. The moon's face, with its familiar sight, invites you to forgive the day for any sharp corners, to soften them into rounded edges that fit the mouth of sleep. You can let your worries dissolve as if they were droplets of ink falling onto a calm pool, fading into pale outlines, leaving you with a circular, unbroken surface on which your breath can gently float. A few more memories of the night arrive, not as a rush, but as a ripple that travels across the skin of the dream world. A cartographer's apprentice, sorting through maps with careful hands, tracing lines that connect star to star, learning to see the world not as a set of separate points, but as an interconnected fabric of light. A lighthouse keeper, hearing the sea carve its way into the night and feeling the moon lift the tides toward a horizon that only the heart can reach. A dancer in a courtyard whose shadow stretches long across the stones, moving with the logic of gravity, with the gravity of grace. Each vignette is a doorway into a larger, kinder way of thinking about the night, not as a void to be fled, but as a letter to be read with a patient gaze. If you wish, you can close your eyes a little more and imagine a field of stars as soft as milk. Each twinkle is a word in a language you are just beginning to understand, a gentle primer in patience and wonder. You do not need to memorize everything tonight. You only need to listen, to drift, to settle into the low, luminous hum of the universe, and to let that hum cradle you into sleep. The night, like a patient schoolroom, can be a place where curiosity becomes quiet and quiet becomes sleep. The night sky, in its patient wisdom, has its own way of speaking to you if you listen with the skin of your imagination. It speaks through the sentences of the moon's light, through the precise but forgiving geometry of the astrolabe, and through the soft, almost inaudible creak of an old library door as a draft of air slides in to greet you. It speaks through your own heartbeat when it matches the ocean's tidal rhythm, through the way your shoulders loosen what they hold back all day. The night reminds you that you are not separate from the world you study. You are a reader of the same language, a participant in the same dream. And so you drift and you float, as if a whispered wind carries you between two soft continents, the one of waking memory and the other of the moon's quiet, silver sea. You settle into a seat of stillness where the mind, no longer compelled by tasks, becomes a listening instrument of its own. A gentle sense of completion lingers, not a closing, but a turning toward rest. The astrolabe's circle becomes a ring of soft light, a halo around your own breath. The moon's pale glow becomes a lullaby for the body, a soundtrack to a sleep that invites you to descend with grace. If you check in with your body now, you might notice that the limbs grow heavier, that the jaw loosens, that the tongue rests in its proper place, and that the chest rises with less effort, as if the night itself is helping to arch your spine into a comfortable curve. The mind, which may have traveled to distant shores by way of memory and myth, begins to settle into a stillness that feels almost like a soft harbor. You are allowed to let go of postures, to surrender to the bed's embrace, to permit your thoughts to drift like a ship's wake behind you, fading, dissolving into the quiet. So many tiny truths have traveled with you in this travel through the sleepy history of astronomy. The moon's face, repeatedly turning to greet us, is a symbol of cycles and returns, the surety that after every night there rises a dawn, after every longing there comes a little rest. The astrolabe, bearing the patient scars of research, teaches us that the road to understanding is not a sprint, but a patient arc, one that invites us to hold still long enough for meaning to reveal itself in whispers rather than shouts. The stars themselves, constant and patient, remind you that you too can be a steady observer of your own inner weather, a navigator of your own inner night. And when you wake again in the morning, you may carry with you a remnant of this lunar calm, the reminder that the sky above and the heartbeat within share a simple truth. There is time to learn, there is time to rest. There is time to listen to the moon's patient lantern and the astrolabe's sleeping gears, and to let them teach you how to move through life with the same quiet curiosity, the same soft gratitude, the same unhurried grace. If you look up, you might imagine the night itself listening back to you, as though the sky keeps a careful diary of every whispered breath on the earth. The sleep you seek tonight is not about escaping questions, but about learning a gentler way to hold them. You are not chasing answers so much as cradling curiosities, letting them float like small lanterns in a dark lake. The lanterns do not hurry toward a shore, they drift toward a horizon that keeps receding, and yet every drift brings you closer to a kind of rest you have earned. Long before the first telescope peered beyond the moon, people looked up and found maps in the darkness. The sky was a vast, patient tutor. In deserts and forests, along great rivers and atop quiet hills, travelers learned to read the sky like a living atlas. The stars were not merely lights. They were anchors for seasons, compasses for journeys, and storytellers for nights when words grew scarce. If you close your eyes, you can feel the ancient wind of those times, carrying the soft glow of constellations that were as immediate as breath and as distant as memory. Think of the ancient observers who spoke softly to the night, not because they were afraid to shout, but because they found the right way to invite the night to listen back. They did not hurry, they waited for the sky to answer with patience. Do you hear that quiet rhythm in your own chest, a ticking you can set to the cadence of the cosmos? You can imagine a Mesopotamian scribe resting a clay tablet on a knee, tracing the arc of a bright guardian in the heavens, the way a mother traces the outline of a child's face in the dark, to memorize every contour for the next day. The sky was their calendar, their law, their lullaby. And the stars, they were not just far away, they were near enough to become a kind of language, one that you can learn if you listen long enough. In those early nights, the simplest sensory invitations were enough to begin a conversation with the vastness. You might feel the cool air on your skin, the faint scent of rain in the distance, the hush of a village letting go of its daylight voice. You might hear the distant call of an owl or the soft rustle of leaves as a breeze slides through them like a quiet, patient hand. In that soundscape, you could sense how the night holds space for memory to breathe. And when you gaze upward, you see that the sky is not an empty dome, but a grand, welcoming canopy threaded with threads of light, threads that ancient voyagers learned to tug gently in the right direction, like tugging a bracelet of stars to remind the world of its shape. You may feel yourself softened into a listening posture, arms loosened from their usual tension, fingers settled somewhere between sleep and wakefulness. You have permission to drift with the stars, to let your thoughts slow to a glide. The earth beneath you keeps turning with a quiet insistence, and the sky, in response, keeps turning its stories toward you. The ages have learned that even a patient gaze can unlock the quiet doors of a long, slow understanding. Tonight, you are invited to walk through those doors with your eyes half closed and your breath evenly spaced, as if counting the steps of a celestial procession. In the oldest stories, the night was a library at the edge of time. The constellations were memory keepers. Orion the Hunter, the Great Bear, the Pleiades, a handful of bright names that held meanings larger than any single life. People learned to recognize them not as separate jewels, but as relatives in a family of light. They would tell tales to their children about how the hunter followed a hungry star, how the friendly bear kept watch over the northern sea, how the seven sisters flew in a small, patient caravan across the heavens. And when you listen to these stories long enough, you sense how the night is patient with your questions, how it allows your mind to wander and come back, as a river returns to its own bend after a slow, quiet detour. Do you feel the gentleness of that invitation? Do you sense the way your own breath aligns with the slow drift of the sky, as if your lungs were little boats on a calm sea? If you listen closely, you may hear the soft hum of an old compass needle turning, not with urgency, but with the knowledge that some places are never in a hurry to be found. The ancients believed the sky held directions not only for the body, but for the soul, a map that could be read with humility rather than ambition. They did not rush toward discoveries. They waited until a line of light revealed itself at the edge of possibility, and then they leaned forward as if listening for a friend's quiet knock. And in such evenings, small vignettes arise like shy moths toward a lamp. A tiny tale of a navigator who learned to sail by starlight, an echo of the great Polynesian tradition, where countless voyages across vast oceans were guided by the rising and setting of specific stars. In those journeys, stars and sea are one rhythm, a shared fragrance of salt and light. The navigator would watch the sky as if it were a living map folded inside eyelids, where each destination is a memory waiting to be made real by intention. The night offered a trust that a steady gaze could convert distance into kinship, that the smallest sign, the wink of a bright planet in a certain season, could become an invitation to travel, to dream, to become braver than one waking moment might permit. And you, the one listening with such soft attention, are now invited to meet a few of those ancient ideas in the quietness of your own room, to meet them not as a test, but as a lullaby. Each time you observe a star that looks unchanged, you remember that the night has a long memory. The heavens are not merely bright dots, but rather patient witnesses to the long arc of time. The stars you see tonight might have twinkled for 100 generations, and yet the light you see from them only began its journey long before the first candle was lit in your village. The distance between then and now dissolves in a breath, and you realize that you are part of that continuum, a momentary flutter in a vast, patient field of possibilities. There are, of course, remarkable facts that whisper through the ages, facts that drift into the story like small ships passing in the night. For instance, ancient astronomers noticed that some stars do not keep the same path in the sky. They wander among the background stars, a sign that they are not fixed but moving. The Greeks gave us the word planet, from planetes, the wanderer, because those bodies did not sit still in the heavens but drifted through the celestial crowd as if they had their own little itineraries. You can rest with this image. The planets do not pretend to be stationary, and that gentle rebellion is what makes the night so richly alive. Would you like to hear a few tiny vignettes that anchor the drift of discovery in human touch? Here is one, a quiet room in the year 1610, when a man named Galileo peered through a telescope and saw what his fellow philosophers had only imagined. He watched 4 bright moons circle a distant planet, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, steadily revolving in their own small orbits around Jupiter, the mighty king of the planets. The sight did not thunder into the world like a proclamation. It arrived as a whisper that coaxed the mind to loosen its grip on old certainties. It did not erase the old images of the heavens. It layered them, adding a new layer of possibility that allowed us to imagine a universe larger than our own neighborhood of stars. And if you listen to that mini story with your whole body, you may feel your heart slow down to the measured pace of a careful observer watching a quiet moon, one that travels through the sky with the lightest of touches, as if a single glance could alter nothing and everything at once. Here is another gentle thread: the moon, our closest companion in the night. Long before we learned about craters and seas, people pictured the moon as a lamp hung in the sky, perfectly smooth and fixed. Then, with the careful, patient work of early observers, scientists began to see it differently, pockmarked with craters, mountains like crests on a sleeping ocean. A world that invites you to imagine sitting on its edge and listening to the dust settle slowly in its ancient valleys. The moon's quiet weathering tells a story of time's passage. The craters on its surface speak in a language of collisions and eras, a history written not in words, but in shadow and texture. As you breathe, you can feel a sense of kinship with the moon's slow, stubborn history, as though your own memories are craters in a landscape of dreams. And in the longer arc of time, the night offers a bigger scale to hold your breath with. There came a moment when people began to understand that our own galaxy, the Milky Way, is not a single bright lane across the sky, but a vast, swirling city of stars, a neighborhood to which we belong, yet cannot quite name in a single word. The idea that the stars belong to a family, our galaxy, was a leap, a terraced step upward from the comfortable, verifiable truths of everyday life to the luminous possibility of a larger cosmos. You are allowed to rest with that knowledge, that the starry sky you admire tonight is part of something immense, something that hums with the same gentle electricity you hear when you let your own heartbeat slow. The universe is not a static painting, but a living gallery, and we are part of the ever-expanding exhibit, listening for the next, quiet, astonishing line. In the late days of that old curiosity, a different kind of light came to be understood. Light itself travels, not instantly, but at a finite speed. A Dutch-Italian-sounding name, Ol Roma, began to notice that the eclipses of a certain moon of Jupiter occurred a touch later or earlier, depending on the time of year and the position of Earth in its orbit. That small discrepancy, observed with patience and care, helped humanity glimpse that light needs time to travel across space. It was not a dramatic shout, but a careful whisper of evidence, a slow turning of the wheel that revealed a truth. Light has a speed that makes distance itself feel tangible. The idea that a sunbeam crossing the universe takes time to arrive is a humbler, more intimate way to hold the cosmos. You may feel that hum in your own chest, as if your breath travels outward, not instantly, but with a small, kind delay that makes space feel more intimate than distance would allow if it arrived all at once. And then there was the concept of the light year, which makes the universe a little more approachable for our human imaginations. A light year is the distance light travels in a year, about 9.46 trillion kilometers, a number large enough to swallow a sigh and still leave room for wonder. When you hear that, you might feel a little ache in your ribcage, a soft squeeze of awe. You realize you are looking at a scale that makes time and space feel like a shared breath, long, patient, and almost tactile. The night invites you to stretch your sense of what far away means, to fold it into your own breathing and become aware of how distance becomes something you can hold, rather than something that overwhelms. And there is yet another luminous thread to follow, a thread that goes down to the very edge of tradition and up toward the edge of modern clarity. The rings around Saturn. Do you remember that medieval quiet about them? The rings were first described clearly by the Dutch mathematician Christian Huygens in 1655, who saw them as a delicate circle around the planet, rather than a solid body that touched Saturn in a single line. The rings are a whisper of complexity, a suggestion that the heavens do not always present themselves in neat, tidy bundles, but can be intricate and layered, like a lullaby that repeats itself with minor variations. The dream of Saturn's rings invites you to consider the beauty of structures that are not perfect, that invite wonder through their subtle irregularities. And in your own room, you might feel your own mind's rings, circles of thought that ripple outward when you breathe in and settle when you breathe out, the same elegance of form that the night offers to the eye. Slowly, the night teaches you a new grammar for thinking about the world. You learn to translate wonder into a patient, quiet attention rather than a frenzy of conclusions. If a question arises, what is the universe made of? How big is the cosmos? You answer not with certainty, but with invitation. Would you like to wander through the night with me for a while? Shall we see how far a single star travels in your own imagination? The practice is not to hurry toward a finished map, but to let the map unfold as you walk, to allow the landscape to become familiar in your steps. And because you are a person who can drift and still remain upright in your own stillness, you may begin to notice a particular rhythm in your body that mirrors the way the cosmos invites us to observe. In the quiet, you might imagine your thoughts as small boats on a gentle lake. Some boats carry questions, slender glimmering questions that bob and then settle as they near the shore of a restful, known answer. Others carry memories, the sense of a night long past, or the echo of a parent's voice guiding you to the safe harbor of sleep. And some boats carry little stories, miniatures of the universe, tiny acts of observation that teach your heart to listen and your body to relax. Hear a mini story in the pattern of a bedtime fable. A tiny comet, named for a century that has long since faded into history, drifts through a quiet corner of the sky, leaving a thread of ice and dust behind it. People once believed comets foretold events, signs in the weather of civilizations. Yet the story you know is gentler. This comet travels a slow, deliberate path, teaching the night to hold its breath, reminding you that even something that seems chaotic can be bound by a patient course. You do not need to chase the comet to understand it. You only need to observe that the night offers both speed and slowness in equal measure, and that the two can coexist in a single breath. Let this tale settle in your chest, a soft, luminous map for your own way to drift. Near the end of this listening, you might feel a quiet question begin to hum in your mind, a rhetorical, gentle invitation. What if the sky is a library because it is patient with our curiosity? What if every turning of a star is a patient library card stamp, an acknowledgement that you belong to a story bigger than your own day? You are allowed to answer with your breath, to let your exhale be the seal on a page that is still being written. The night asks for your presence, not for your approval, and what you offer is enough. Your willingness to listen, your readiness to drift, and your soft, unhurried trust. And now, as you float toward deeper rest, you are invited to weave the past into your present, not as a burden, but as a blessing. The idea that the speed of light can be measured, the idea that our galaxy is a grand tapestry of countless stars, the idea that planets wander among the luminous backdrop. All these ideas are ways the universe grows larger without forcing you to hurry toward a conclusion. You can hold them gently as if they were glass beads in the palm of your hand, each bead a doorway to wonder. The more you hold with care, the more your shoulders can relax, the more your jaw can unclench, the more your eyelids can soften with the quiet knowledge that tonight you are exactly where you need to be. If you drift into a place where sleep begins to call, listen for the language of the night itself, a soft, unhurried syllable that repeats like a lullaby across the sky. It says, settle, settle, let go of the day's weight, breathe again, and watch how the world continues to orbit with or without your awareness. You are not required to solve the cosmos in a single night, nor to prove yourself to the infinite. The cosmos does not demand your ascent. It invites your descent into a calmer, more lucid state where the separate parts of you can align in a quiet harmony. Let your shoulders drop, your hands rest, your jaw soften, and your mind loosen its grip on each thought as if it were a thread that leads you into a warmer, deeper quiet. The night has traveled far to gather these lessons for you, carrying them like a moth's wing glistening in a lantern's pale glow. The lessons are not loud proclamations, but affectionate invitations. Slow down, listen, breathe, observe, wonder. The stars are patient teachers, and you are a willing pupil, not because you must be perfect, but because you deserve this gentleness. In your sleep, the sleep of the world will continue its patient work, nudging you toward a dawn that comes not with a rush, but with a soft, luminous arrival. And so you drift. The room is your harbor, the bed a quiet boat, the night a wide, forgiving sea. The sail you hoist is made of breath. The rudder is designed from stillness. The oars are your gentle, repeated exhalations. The stars above keep their watch, not to judge your pace, but to bless your willingness to rest with them. You are allowed to surrender into the slow discoveries of the night, the discoveries that do not end in a single moment, but unfold across sleeps and awakenings, across centuries of human patience and curiosity, across countless generations who learn to read the sky as a lover reads a beloved name, softly, reverently, and with enduring trust. Let the night continue to unfold its quiet, constant music, the soft hush of air slipping through leaves, the faint rustle of a curtain brushing against the window frame, the distant creak of the house settling into sleep. Every sound becomes a cue for your breathing, every breath a tiny wave that gently laps at the shore of your awareness. In this way, you are learning the art of staying present while allowing the imagination to wander. The wandering is not aimless. It is a respectful pilgrimage to the very edge of wonder, where questions become soft radiance and answers arrive as calm confirmations that you are held by something larger, something kind, something that loves the pace you have chosen for tonight. And when you feel ready to drift further, let your attention drift upward again, toward the small, bright points that punctuate the ceiling of your dark room, imagined versions of the heavens you have walked with in your mind. They remind you that even the oldest stories were born from the quiet gaze of someone who chose to notice, to wait, to listen. They remind you that the most important discoveries often begin with a patient breath, a slow tilt of the head, and a willingness to stay with a question a little longer than before. As you settle into the most tender corners of sleep, you become a student of time, the time of the heart, the time of the world, the time of the night that refuses to hurry. Let us end as we began, with a gentle invitation to rest, to drift, to dissolve into a profound calm that carries you through the boundaries between waking and dream. The history of astronomy is not a distant chronicle, but a living dialogue, a conversation between human longing and cosmic scope. You have stepped into that dialogue tonight, not to finish it, but to add your own soft, enduring note to its melody. It is a note of peace, of curiosity held lightly, of a breath that lengthens into the vastness and returns with a sigh of relief. You are safe here, sheltered by the quiet confidence of the night, held by the slow orbit of comfort. You have earned this ease, this stillness, this deep, unhurried rest. Sleep now wraps itself around you like a warm cloak, the kind that does not smother, but invites you to melt into its fibers. As you drift, you may notice your thoughts becoming distant, like ships fading beyond the horizon, while the inner sea beneath your mind grows calm and reflective. You become a witness to your own breath. Inhale with a soft, deliberate cadence. Exhale with a longer, slower sigh that seems to answer the night's ancient question. Did you come here to rest, or did you come here to remember how to breathe? The answer is yes. Rest and remember together, as the stars glimmer with patient constancy above, and sleep cradles you with the sure, unhurried rhythm of a world that keeps turning quietly toward dawn. Close your eyes for a moment and let the night air sigh through the window, a pale whisper, as if the world itself is turning its face toward a quiet flame that lives far beyond the reach of your sight. The pale fire has a biography that unfolds with each breath you take, a patient story told in light and warmth, in the slow choreography of day bending to night and night releasing the day again and again. If you listen, not with your ears, but with the soft corners of your attention, you may hear the sun's own biography spoken in the language of tides and time, in the slow poetry of dawn after dawn after dawn. Do you hear it now, as you drift toward that slender line between waking and sleep, where stories become weather and weather becomes thought? You are invited to imagine the sun as a storyteller who does not rush. In the quiet, it is a star, one among billions, yet to you it feels intimate, the center of your calendar, the steady metronome of your mornings. The sun is a living furnace of fusion, a colossal engine that has slept and dreamed and burned for about 4.6 billion years. The image of its age feels almost gentle, as if you could cradle a handful of its history in your palm and let it settle there like warm river pebbles. That age is not a verdict but a patience, a long, luminous arc in which the sun was born from a vast cloud of gas and dust, a tender collapse into a ball of fire whose core was already singing the language of hydrogen turning into helium. If you wish to speak softly to the sun, you might tell it that you understand how heat becomes light, how quiet becomes day, how a small amount of matter can yield a hum that travels across space and lands gently in your own chest. Would you like to hear one of its earliest stories in a single breath? The solar system, you see, is not a single thing but a cradle of orbiting children, planets, asteroids, comets, bound together by a shared gravity, and at the center sits this pale fire, unhurried and large. The sun's mass is vast, about 2 × 10^30 kilograms, and it accounts for roughly 99.86% of the mass of the entire solar system. In the quiet math of nature, that amount of mass is enough to hold together a circle of wonders, to keep the planets looping in their patient dances, to keep your own evening from scattering into oblivion. If you stretch your imagination, you may feel a subtle tug, not a shove, as if the sun is leaning toward you in a kind of benevolent gravity that asks you to settle into a comfortable posture and listen. A gentle question lingers in the air, a question you can answer with a breath. How far away is this friend of ours? The distance, measured in a unit named for the Earth's own orbit, is about 1 astronomical unit. 1 AU is roughly 149.6 million kilometers, and in a moment of stillness, the distance becomes not a number but a sensation. The space between your heart and the edge of the horizon, the space between a thought and its reflection, the space that invites you to relax into the idea that some things are so vast that they become intimate through repetition. Light, the sun's most faithful messenger, takes about 8 minutes to travel that distance to Earth. In those 8 minutes, the sun's quiet voice travels across the gulf of space and lands with you as a soft, warm certainty. I am here and you are here, and together we are bound by the gentle physics of time. Let me invite you to listen to a few more notes from this pale biography, notes that are less about dates and more about the sensation of lifetimes unfolding in a single heartbeat. The outer skin of the sun, the photosphere, is where our eyes glimpse the world's most familiar flame. It is not perfectly smooth. It wears sunspots, dark freckles that come and go as part of a grand solar cycle. The sun's 8 or 9, or perhaps a dozen years of quiet and riot. If you notice, the surface is not a flat plane, but a living map, a quilt of light and cooler patches that drift and shift with the star's own rotation. The sun spins more slowly than you might expect, taking about 25 days to make a full trip at the equator, though it laces its wit along slower latitudes with a sly, patient motion. The difference in rotation across latitudes is a reminder that even the calmest faces carry a hidden energy, a microcosm of life inside a calm exterior. With this in mind, you might rest your gaze on the idea that the sun's energy does not poise on the surface like a stubborn flame you can see with your eyes alone. It is a story of layers and flows, In the solar interior, fusion forges the sun's power. In the core, temperatures soar to around 15 million degrees Celsius, a furnace where hydrogen atoms fuse into helium, releasing the prodigious energy that eventually lights your day. The journey of that energy is a patient pilgrimage. Radiation in the radiative zone, then convection as heat rises in boiling motions toward the surface, until it escapes in a blinding, paying forward glow that makes your morning possible and your evening possible in its own time. If you imagine the sun as a being who breathes, you may feel its breath moving like a tide, up and out from a central glow, dissolving into the atmosphere as a luminous sigh that warms your skin without burning the edges of your night. Sometimes the biography reads like a quiet epic about a river rather than a star. The sun sends forth a solar wind, the rivers whisper, charged particles that stream outward through the solar system. It is not a storm, but a steady, almost motherly flow that shapes the heliosphere, sheltering Earth and the other inner planets from some of the roughness of space. The auroras you might have glimpsed in old memories or in the corner of a dream are the sun's tender lights meeting Earth's magnetosphere, a jewel-like hush that softens the night with green, violet, and blue trails. If you allow yourself to be present with the idea, you may sense the magnetosphere as a quiet shield that has learned to listen to the solar wind and to respond with a comforting glow. A reminder that even the vastness of space can cradle a tiny, blue-green world. The sun's surface is a stage for a few more rituals that travel down to your bed as whispers. A cycle of magnetic activity that waxes and wanes roughly every 11 years. It is a rhythm that holds both tension and release, like the breath you take before speaking a delicate truth. Sunspots arise when magnetic fields twist and break at the surface, cooler than their surroundings, yet expansive enough to remind us that surface calm often masks deeper complexity. And so the sun teaches you that quiet does not equal emptiness. Quiet can be a rehearsal, a patient invitation to listen more deeply, to notice how time folds into itself when observed with care. If you are listening for practical truths beneath poetry, here is one. The sun's energetic cycle can influence climate and weather patterns on Earth, not by dictating every cloud, but by guiding the overall tempo of sunshine and storm in long, soft arcs. You may rest with this thought and let it loosen the edge of any anxious tension. The universe is not out to alarm you. It is here to harmonize you with a larger cadence. Now let me share a few tiny stories tucked within the Pale Fire's biography. The kind of stories that feel like old lullabies told by a grandmother star to a child of the night. Once long ago, observers in far lands learned to measure the sun's journeys by the shadow of a stick in the desert, a simple gnomon that cast time onto dusty ground and whispered the hours into the air. The same idea, carried on human breath and instrument, grew into calendars and cathedrals, into the careful notes of scribes who watched the heavens as if they watched their own hearts. In one such story, an ancient observer paints the dawn as a festival of colors. Pale light stretched across the sky like a ribbon, and as the sun climbed, the shadows drew back, revealing the world's edges with more gentle clarity than before. In another, a Mayan temple's stone carving aligns with the sun on solstices and equinoxes, teaching the rhythm of seasons through the geometry of stone. A reminder that memory and mathematics can walk hand in hand, even when the night is long and the day is bright. If you let your imagination be lulled by these vignettes, you might hear a child beside a grandmother on a hillside, watching the sunrise as if it were a story the sky was telling again for the first time. The grandmother might press a hand to the child's chest and say, "This pale fire is a patient tutor, dear." It teaches you how to wait, how to listen to your own breath, how to settle even when the world rushes. And the child, with eyes full of wonder, would feel the sun's biography as a gentle map of moments, a guide to noticing how the day unfolds, not in a single flare, but in a series of luminous pauses, each one inviting you to sink a little deeper into sleep's soft bed. As you listen, perhaps you glimpse a thread that ties the sun to your own inner weather. Just as the sun uses nuclear fusion to become the bright heart of our days, you also carry a core of energy, the breath you borrow, the quiet resilience you cultivate, the way your mind can glow with a gentle idea and then settle into rest. The sun's outer layers, while they glow brilliantly, also remind you that even the most dazzling surfaces are supported by deeper processes. You too have layers, the surface you show to the world, and the deeper currents of feeling you attend to only when you are truly still. The slightest shift in your own center can cause the thoughts to drift away, like leaves on a slow river, dissolving into the larger body of night. Are you able to notice where your own energy begins to rise and where it begins to soften and dissolve back towards stillness? You have permission to let the current take you, not forward toward some bright object in the sky, but inward, toward the soft center of your own breath. I invite you to another small, patient fact, folded gently into the narrative like a lullaby note. The sun's light is indeed a traveler. It takes about 8 minutes to traverse the space between you and the sun. That means when you first opened your eyes this morning, the light you saw at the horizon began its journey long before you woke. It arrived as a visitor and now lingers as a memory of the moment you opened your eyes. If you remain still, you can feel the continuity of time as a quiet thread that stretches across the room, from the pale fire outside to the room you inhabit within. The distance is not simply measure. It is a reminder that in the vastness of space, in the long tale of history, you are part of a larger conversation between day and night, between light and consciousness, between a star's birth and your own gentle becoming. And yet, for all its grandeur, the sun is not a distant tyrant, but a companion who walks with you through your days in a slow, reliable rhythm. It is a common breath, a shared tempo, a reminder that the universe has built into its very fabric a way to rest. The sun's energy warms the planet, but in the quiet hours of sleep, its influence also becomes a softer thing, an invitation to soften your shoulders, to relax your jaw, to let gravity pull you toward your own pillow, to allow your mind to dissolve edges and drift toward a smoother, more spacious sleep. In your bed, you are a small orbit within a larger system, held gently by a gravity that you cannot see, but can feel in the way your chest settles and your hands loosen their grip on the day. Do you feel that permission to drift, permission to settle, permission to become part of the larger movement of night? A few more details of the sun's biography may drift past like quiet stars. The layers of the sun include a photosphere, chromosphere, and corona, each speaking its own language of warmth and light, each contributing to the way day meets night on your horizon. The corona, a crown of corona that glows with a pale, almost otherworldly light, hovers above the surface and reminds you that even what seems most still has a reach beyond perception. The chromosphere itself speaks in a light you cannot always see with the naked eye, a thin, delicate barrier that glitters at the edge of a total eclipse, or at least in a moment of imagination when you let your mind stretch beyond the view your eyelids offer. The sun's atmosphere is not a rumor but a chorus, singing softly of physics and time, of fields and particles dancing together in a quiet, almost devotional rhythm. Listen to that chorus within your own chest, the soft hum of your breathing becoming the echo of a distant cosmic choir, the body's own way of aligning with the universe's slow, patient music. We return again to the sense of permission, permission to rest, permission to listen, permission to let the day's light retire with grace, and to let your breath become a tide that rises and falls with natural ease. You may not control the sun's pace, but you can control the pace of your own attention. You can choose to let your worries dissolve into the pillow, to watch them drift away like specks of dust carried by a soft current, to let the mind settle into a gentle stillness where even the most luminous facts are softened by the atmosphere of sleep. If you have a question, you may ask it now and answer it with a breath. What would the pale fire say to me if I listened with more tenderness? The answer, if you allow it, is not a sharp conclusion, but a soft resonance, an inner reassurance that you are part of a universe who loves to narrate itself to those who listen. In the end, the sun's biography is a long, luminous apprenticeship in attention. It teaches you how to observe with humility, how to notice the way light travels, and how to feel time in your own chest as a patient, even tempo. It suggests that the world can appear as a gallery of quiet wonders, each one inviting you to drift closer, to settle, to dissolve your edges, to feel your own boundaries soften until you are nearly sea and sky, a body of breath and a body of light in a shared, silent room. And when you wake again in the morning, you might recall the pale flame that has been with you all through the night, a star's biography tucked inside the day you will greet, a gentle reminder that your inner weather too can be watched with awe and kindness, a way to begin the day with the same patience the sun uses to begin its long, patient ascent. If you are tired, you may tell yourself, in your own soft speech, that it is safe to release the day. If you are curious, you may permit your curiosity to rest for a spell, letting the mind wander through the sun's quiet history as you would drift through a moonlit lake, letting ripples fade and the surface settle into glassy calm. If you want to keep listening, you may choose to listen to the slow ticking of your own heart, a rhythm that pairs perfectly with the sun's long, enduring beat. You are allowed to listen without striving, to hear without answering, to see without forcing a single conclusion. The night is generous with its answers, and sleep is its most faithful messenger. As you rest, imagine the solar core as a hidden chamber warming quietly in the heart of a cave, where birth and transformation happen beneath the floorboards of the world. The fusion within the core is a patient alchemy, turning hydrogen into helium with a kindness that defies haste. The energy travels outward, a slow ladder of steps, radiation in one chamber, convection in another, until the surface opens to the world in a glow that your eyes can learn to trust again and again. The glow becomes your waking light, and the knowledge of such patient transformation becomes a lullaby you carry into sleep. You may listen to this, and you may let it soften your mind, letting ideas drift away like driftwood on a calm sea. Would you stay still for a while longer, letting your breaths become slower and deeper as the pale fire continues its biography in the quiet of space? You can allow the idea that the sun's energy reaches Earth through the same universal law that guides your own breath, an exchange, a gift, a shared rhythm of giving and receiving. The sun's energy supports life, lights the sky, and brightens the mind's own patterns. In return, your body offers rest, your heart offers calm, your thoughts offer peace. The exchange is as ancient as the stars themselves, and as intimate as a hush between two people who are listening to the same heartbeat. In Taurus, a small, bright dancing among constellations, there lies a cluster named for a family of 7 sisters, the Pleiades. They are called by many names in many tongues, but the simplest truth lives in the eyes of a quiet observer. A handful of stars that seem to lean toward each other, like friends leaning in to tell a well-kept secret. You may imagine their light as footprints of ancient travelers, marking a road through the dark that is as old as the idea of a path itself. This is the sleepy history of astronomy, and you are a patient archaeologist of what the night keeps. The Pleiades are an open star cluster, a gathering of stars born from the same cloud and still moving together through space. They do not stand alone. They travel as a small family whose laughter you hear as a soft shimmer in the distance, a reminder that connection is a kind of gravity that holds light in a shared memory. Tonight, permit yourself to hear the 7 bright whispers: Maya, Electra, Alcyone, Taygeta, Seleno, Asterope, and Merope, not as a science list, but as names given to a chorus, a story that glows. You may listen first to one simple, serene fact. The Pleiades lie about 440 light-years away from Earth. If you could travel at the speed of light, it would take you 440 years to arrive where they are now. But you do not travel at that speed, you travel at your pace, and in your pace, the stars reach back through time to tell you stories from long ago. When you glimpse their light, you are looking not at the present moment, but at a memory that has traveled through the vast, patient years to arrive at your window. The distance is not merely numbers. It is a soft piano of time, a reminder that the universe has its own rhythm, slower than a sigh, deeper than a breath held for a dream. You may allow this fact to settle into your thoughts as a quiet, comforting weight, not heavy, but exactly where it should be, like a book opening to a familiar page. Let us wander together through a gentler, more human part of the night. The age of this cluster. The Pleiades are young by the Library of the Cosmos, somewhere around 100 million years old. It is a strange and tender thing to imagine a group of stars that young, vividly shining in a night so old that it has learned to tell stories about dragons and heroes, about comets as they were, and about a planet that might be listening now. Yet there they are, still gathering light as though time itself were a shelf, and they were placing small, bright objects on it, careful to arrange them in a way that future seekers might recognize as friendship. You may feel the gentle contrast between youth and the immensity of the night, and in that contrast, the heart learns how to breathe with both resilience and grace. The universe holds both the fresh bloom of a star and the patient patience of the dark that surrounds it. In your mind, you may run a small, soft mini-story through the space between the stars. A mariner, long ago, sails by the edge of night, guiding by a familiar cluster that glimmers above the sea like a beacon drawn in silver ink. The sailor leans on the rail and speaks in hushed, respectful tones, as if greeting old friends who have traveled along the same ocean of night for countless tides. The seven sisters in this tale are not distant strangers, but kin who know the way home by the glow on each other's faces. The sailor does not boast of speed or conquest. Rather, he inhales the cool, salt-sweet air and allows the light to tell him where to steer, how to lay his course, and if the night is safe enough to sleep. If you listen closely, you may hear the gentle rustle of a rope, a soft clink of a bell, the way a sailor's breath steadies when the stars begin to hum with a familiar lullaby cadence. Now you too may breathe with that cadence. In, out, and a tiny pause where the world seems to tilt, just enough to remind you that you are held by a larger, kinder gravity. As the eye rests, you meet another fact without trying to prove anything or to prove too much at once. The Pleiades are visible to the naked eye, a cluster you can glimpse with simple, quiet eyes and a calm night. There is something intimate in that simplicity, a reminder that some of the most ancient knowledge does not demand a telescope or a label, only quiet attention. The sky offers a gentle permission. You may simply look and recognize. The group's light appears to converge into a bright core, and though their names shimmer in a human tongue, their glow speaks in a language older than syllables. You may tilt your head, let your shoulders soften, and invite the night to share its patient geometry with you. The world's memory is not a loud parade of facts, but a soft shelter where a person can rest and learn at the same time. A fourth, delicate thread emerges as you listen to the night's quiet insistence that we measure our own breath against the universe's slow, patient tempo. The cluster contains hundreds of stars, yet it is a compact family, bright enough to catch the solar wind's breath, and yet small enough to be contained by a single glance of a pair of eyes trained on the sky. The most brilliant members of the Seven Sisters are blue-white stars that dance in a tight group, their light painting a picture not of loud grandeur, but of confident unity. They remind you that there is strength in proximity, a kind of serene confidence in belonging to something larger than the self. You may invite your own breath to align with that unity, each inhale and exhale echoing the group's quiet cohesion. Each pause a gentle reminder of the space between one star and the next, a space that is both emptiness and invitation. We travel now deeper into the science of the whisper, the matter of distance, the measure of light, and the patience of measurement. The Pleiades live about 440 light-years away, which means you are looking at light that traveled across the vastness of time to find you here. The mind can rest in that paradox. Looking at the light is looking at a moment older than your current breath, yet here you are, listening as if to a friend across a long table who has waited since you began to listen. If you hold this in your mind, you may feel a soft tremor of awe, a barely perceptible tremor that travels through the chest and settles in the belly as a quiet anchor. The idea is not to overwhelm you with grandeur, but to invite a respectful stillness in which the heart can find its own sense of duration. The body learns to wait a little longer for each moment's curtain to rise, and in that waiting there is peace. A fifth fact threads itself into the night's fabric with a patient, almost shy confidence. The cluster is relatively young, around 100 million years old. Compare that to humans, and the idea stretches the imagination into a soft arc of time. You exist for a fleeting number of decades, and the Pleiades have been shining since the days when the Earth's own seas were shaping into their present forms. Yet youth in the cosmos is not a noise. It is a melody of possibility. The seven sisters are like a chorus of apprentice stars, practicing the scales of gravity and light, still imperfectly perfect, learning their own songs as they drift through space together. You may let this thought drift in your chest as a warm current in a quiet pool. It is a reminder that even in the immense, there is a gentleness to growth, a patience that does not hurry the dawn, but invites it to arrive with the softest smile. As you float with the night, you may hear the night's own skin creak a little, and the hush reveals a detail that science carries with a certain tenderness. The cluster is surrounded by a faint, soft haze, a reflection nebula, dust and gas, reflecting the light of the bright blue stars themselves. The sky's own handwriting spells out in the dust a kind of halo, a delicate frame around the cluster, as if the heavens themselves had decided to dress the seven sisters in a shawl of pale, silvery mist. You may notice this with the mind's eye or with the more physical eye if you are outdoors and the air is clear enough to see a veil of blue-tinged fog around the stars. The nebula is not a barrier to the light, but a partner in the light's story, a reminder that even light's path encounters matter, that slows it a little, shifts it, brushes it with a touch of cloud and dust. In your own breath, you can feel the soft dust of memory settling into your lungs, a reminder that light travels not only through space, but also through time, through us, as we listen. The night also holds a point of human history that is quietly instructive, a reminder of how stories and measurements walk together like old friends. Long before we had precise parallax or a space telescope, the Pleiades offered sailors, farmers, and stargazers a bright, navigable guide. Later, astronomers would learn to use a method called main sequence fitting to estimate distance, comparing the cluster's stars to the familiar ladder of stellar evolution we know as the main sequence. In a sense, to measure the Pleiades was to measure the universe's own way of keeping accounts, a way of writing down the numbers that describe light, gravity, and time. And yet, even as instruments improved, the spirit of the cluster remained the same. A small, intimate gathering of suns that invite you to pause, observe, and listen. You may give yourself permission to feel how human curiosity and the night's own patient rhythm walk hand in hand, step by step, year after year, until your own breath aligns with the slow, celestial march. There in the hush between the stars, another thread of truth glows softly. The Pleiades are not isolated witnesses. They belong to the Milky Way's grand procession. They share the stage with countless other stars, moving together through the galaxy as if on a looped, cosmic parade. This gentle motion, proper motion through space, means that, given enough time, the cluster will drift with the tide of the galaxy. The idea of drift is comfort here, a mirror of the human practice of letting thoughts drift away until they dissolve into the night. When you permit yourself to drift, you are practicing the same sacred art that keeps galaxies in their paths. The art of becoming small, of becoming patient, of letting the universe be the vast, tender mother of your attention. You may breathe and watch the Pleiades breathe with you, a shared rhythm that makes the night feel like a living map of belonging. You may now notice a more intimate, almost domestic intimacy. The names of the seven sisters stitched into your mind as though they were the steps of a lullaby. Maya, Electra, Alcyone, Taygeta, Seleno, Asterope, Merope. The names do not merely designate. They invite you to imagine each sister as a character carrying a small, kind secret of the night. Maya as the keeper of a quiet lantern. Electra as a conspirator of silver threads. Alcyone as the gentle queen of the group, standing at the center. Taygeta as the thoughtful listener. Seleno as the storyteller of distant winds. Asterope as the shy star who glows brightest when not asked to perform. Merope, the softest glow, sometimes dimmer, yet full of a patient, hopeful glow that refuses to vanish. You may let your mind trace those shapes, the way light would sketch silhouettes on a dark wall, and notice how the night itself does not demand the shape to be perfect. It invites you to feel the shape, to sense its presence, to rest within it. Now gently, I invite you to a few more thoughts that pair science with the feeling of belonging. The Pleiades have been a teacher, a friend, and a map for countless generations. They have appeared on ancient calendars, on regional legends, and in the quiet conversations between people who seek a weather North Star or a way to translate distance into something a body can feel. In one language or another, the Seven Sisters became a reminder of kinship, of cycles, of the way families grow and travel together through time. You may let your own memory drift toward that sense of kinship. How you are part of a world that has existed long before your first memory of sleep, and how your own small breath will be part of this sky's story long after you fall asleep tonight. It is a soft, respectful kindness toward yourself, to see your life as part of a continuum rather than a solitary moment, to acknowledge that the night's quiet history has a gentle way of embracing every listener in its warmth. To close this chamber of the night, you may place your palm over your chest, feel your heart's quiet rhythm, and listen as if you are listening to the sea. The Pleiades continue to whisper through the ages, teaching us not through loud proclamations, but through patient, persistent light. The stars do not demand belief. They offer a return of wonder if you will allow it. You may grant yourself the permission to keep a small, safe, daily ritual, to observe a single star a night, or to watch a cluster that speaks to your own sense of memory, or to carry a tiny note in your heart that says, "I am here and I am listening." The night is patient. The sky is generous. Your breath is a bridge between them. And so you drift softly as the hours fold into a quiet, circular ease. The Seven Sisters return to their ancient, serene dialogue with the night, and you learn how to listen in a way that honors both mind and heart. It is a listening that does not rush for conclusions, but settles into the slow, exquisite cadence of a lullaby sung by galaxies. The Pleiades do not demand polished answers. They invite a kind of humility, the humility found in watching a candle burn, not to extinguish your light, but to allow your own glow to align with the larger, gentler glow of the universe. You may let go of the need to understand every fact in the moment, and instead let a few important truths settle inside you. That the cluster exists as a small, intimate family in a vast sea of stars. That it shines as a beacon of connection, time, and place. That even light needs to travel, and that travel is a story you can share with your own breath. If sleep is a journey, then this night's journey through the whispering Pleiades has prepared a map for your rest. A map drawn with calm, colored by memory, and filled with the soft, almost prayer-like cadence of a mind that is learning to listen. The night asks nothing more of you than this: permission to drift, permission to settle, permission to dissolve into the world's gentle center. You may accept all of these permissions with a small sigh that is nothing more than relief, a sign that you have allowed yourself to be guided by a patient, starlit tutor. The Pleiades whisper, and you listen. The breath travels, and you travel with it. The dream waits, as it always does, just beyond the edge of waking, ready to cradle the teller of stories in sleep. And if your eyes choose to close, as eyes often do when the night becomes a soft teacher, you will carry with you the 7 gentle lighthouses of Taurus, their light a quiet, everlasting invitation to come back to stillness, to come back to breath, to come back to the room you've made for yourself in the world of night. Now with every exhale, you dissolve a little more of the day's weight, and the night remains, a patient garden of stars, ready to hold your dreams as they rise. You may keep your attention here for as long as you wish, listening to the faint, patient whisper of the cluster's light, feeling your own heart slow, your thoughts unspooling like a soft thread, and your body settling deeper into the cradle of sleep. The 7 sisters watch over you not as distant monarchs, but as companions who have learned the art of listening to the quiet, the art of giving the day its time to pass, the art of letting you rest in the knowledge that you belong to something larger, something timeless, something that gently glows in the dark because it loves your sleep as much as your waking. And so you drift toward the edge of dawn's possibility or deeper into night's soft ocean, whichever your body chooses. The whispering Pleiades remain, a tiny, shimmering chorus in the vast quiet, a reminder that the universe itself is a place where history and grace entwine. You are not separate from this. You belong to it as you belong to your breath, as you belong to the room where your eyes close and your thoughts soften into foam of silver light. When you wake, you may carry with you a faint echo of their names, a memory of their light, and a sense that the night will always be ready to tell you another part of its long, patient story. Now, as you rest, let your shoulders sink down, let your jaw unclench, let your hands lie open, and let the memory of the 7 sisters settle into your chest like a lullaby you have carried with you for ages. You are safe here, you are welcome here, you are exactly where you're meant to be, listening to the slow, careful whisper of the Pleiades, and letting your own story be told in its own good time, in its own quiet, luminous way. The night holds you, the stars hold their breath with you, and the world for a moment is a distant, gentle hymn you sing with your own, soft, slower-than-sleep voice.